Chapter 1236. Zhang Yufeng was naturally in the Heaven Sword Palace now, while Chen Ruijing was exploring various places. He was a cultivator and needed to improve his strength through battle. As for the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, she was currently living in seclusion in the Water Element Valley, a place about 1,500 kilometers away from here. Ling Han decided to immediately go find the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Overthrowing the five sects could be done slowly, but this wife had already been here for 10,000 years, and he didn't want to wait a moment longer. He exited the Hanlin Pavilion, and was just about to set off when he saw a carriage blocking his way. A woman in azure curtsied slightly on the carriage, and said, "Grandmaster Ling, my mistress invites you." "Your mistress?" Ling Han was surprised. "Who is it?" "Grandmaster Ling. You'll know when you get on the carriage." The woman in azure pursed her lips into a smile, revealing a beautiful charm. She was dressed like a servant girl, but if a servant girl had such a seductive charm, then what kind of seductive beauty would her master be? Ordinary people would definitely be filled with endless fantasies, and gladly agree to get on the carriage to see this mistress' true appearance. But how could Ling Han be in the mood for that now? He shook his head and said, "Then forget it." He flicked his sleeves and swaggered off. "Hey, hey, hey!" The woman in azure hurriedly leaped down from the carriage, blocking Ling Han's path. Moreover, she stuck out her perky breasts, almost bumping into Ling Han, forcing Ling Han to take a step back. If a woman became shrewish, men really had to be careful. Otherwise, if you were touched by her breasts, it would definitely be because you wanted to take advantage of her. That had to be the case. "Grandmaster Ling, my mistress is one of the few beauties in the world. Who knows how many talented people line up to see my mistress, but that also depends on my mistress' mood." The woman in azure was slightly proud. "Now that my mistress has taken the initiative to invite you, you actually refuse. Aren't you afraid of making my mistress sad? What does that have to do with me?" Ling Han said calmly. "Then I won't allow it," the woman in azure said, and reached out to grab Ling Han. "Grandmaster Ling, since you are not willing to get on the carriage obediently, I can only make you submit." Boom! A terrifying aura surged from her body. She was actually an elite of the Sun-Moon tier. Ling Han was astonished. This mighty elite of the Sun-Moon tier could go anywhere. Yet he insisted on becoming a servant of others? However, he was naturally unafraid. He clenched his fist and punched at his opponent. Because he had cultivated the lightning sword technique and comprehended a trace of the power of the heavenly tribulation, his punch was not only fast, but it was also imbued with the power of thunder and lightning. Its destructive power was astonishing. Lightning flashed. The green-clothed woman couldn't help but reveal a shocked expression, but it was already too late for her to withdraw her attack, and her delicate hand just happened to collide with Ling Han's fist. Pong! A heavy sound resounded, and both of them retreated. This woman was at the late stage of the Sun-Moon tier, and she wasn't a multi-star genius. Thus, her power was merely on par with Ling Han's. However, Ling Han's punch was imbued with the power of the heavenly tribulation. How astonishing was its destructive power! Instantly, the green-clothed woman's delicate hand was drenched with blood. "I really didn't think that Grandmaster Ling is actually an elite of martial art." The green-clothed woman channeled her cultivation technique and stopped the bleeding. There was a hint of surprise on her face, but she didn't panic. However, since Madam has given the order, Grandmaster Ling should obediently cooperate. Her eyes widened. Wang! Two suns and moons appeared. Yet they didn't exude any heat. Instead, they were filled with a gloomy coldness. Frost appeared in the surroundings and fell down. The suns and moons were only like the suns and moons in the sky. Some people cultivated the power of ice, so the suns and moons were naturally incredibly cold, exuding a boundless power of cold. Sun and moon released. Ling Han nodded in his mind. The level of martial art here was indeed higher than on the Joint Peace Planet. At least on the Joint Peace Planet, only Venerable Trinity could release the Eternal River. The others could only use the power of the mountains, rivers, suns, moons, and stars. This kind of coldness was enough to freeze Ling Han's blood and seal his body in ice. However, this was far from enough to defeat him. His whole body exuded the light of thunder. Lightning interweaved and instantly kept the power of ice 3 feet away from his body. Ice sealing spear. The green-clothed woman shouted softly. Boundless cold air condensed into an ice spear that was 3 feet long. Then she fiercely pierced it toward Ling Han. The cold wind swirled and turned into countless ice blades. Ling Han pointed out with a finger. Boundless sword intent manifested and carried the power of lightning as it met the ice blades. Pa 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 pa. All the ice blades were shattered. Ling Han stood with his hands behind his back and said, "Is this enough?" The green-clothed woman shook her ice spear and said, "Not enough." She continued to attack. Her spear continued to stab, and it could even be used as a staff. Under the infusion of the will of martial art, numerous divine patterns appeared on the ice spear, interweaving to form a brilliant light. Ling Han humphed, and also unleashed his battle prowess. His fists bombarded the ice spear, continuously smashing into it. Ka-ka-ka. Cracks appeared on the ice spear, and after taking a heavy punch from Ling Han, it finally shattered bit by bit. Meanwhile, the green-clothed woman's face was also deathly pale, and her hair was disheveled. She no longer had the slightest bit of beauty and allure. She couldn't help but be stunned. Ling Han was only at the early stage of the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, yet he had managed to defeat her head-on. His strength was too astonishing. However, she didn't admit defeat. Instead, she retrieved a divine seal, and was about to slap it on her body. "Qing Luo, enough?" A bone-piercing seductive voice traveled out from the carriage. It was none other than the leader of the Treasure Forest Pavilion of Big Trade City, Lin Yuqi. As a fragrant fragrance wafted through the air, the carriage door had already opened. A beautiful woman with an impressive figure stood there, and just by standing there, one would be filled with endless fantasies. Moreover, it was clear that this woman was extremely adept at maximizing her charm. She wasn't just casually standing there. Instead, her slender figure was slightly slanted, and the curves of her entire body were completely accentuated. It was true that it wasn't the wine that intoxicated one, but the wine that intoxicated one. "Grandmaster Ling, I'm not some dreadful beast. Are you afraid that I'll eat you up?" She giggled, and her voice was like a swaying flower, extremely alluring. Hearing her say this, Ling Han naturally couldn't just walk away. He smiled and said, "What advice does Madam have?" "Come into the carriage first," Lin Yuqi said with a seductive smile. Ling Han hesitated slightly, but still nodded, and boarded the carriage. Lin Yuqi turned around and entered the carriage first. She was wearing a long red dress, which was well-tailored and tightly wrapped around her perfect figure. If one stood behind her, one could clearly feel her willowy waist swaying gracefully. Moreover, her round bottom was also wrapped tightly in the fabric. With every step she took, a voluptuous bottom would be completely outlined. Her peach-shaped breasts were so tempting that one could drool. Ling Han could be considered to have seen many beauties, and in terms of seduction, Empress Luanxing was more than 10 times more seductive than her. However, in terms of how to display her charm in the most provocative manner, this woman was definitely the best. Even he didn't dare to do too much, fearing that he would become aroused. Chapter 1237. Lin Yuqi's every movement was enchanting. Empress Luanxing was a natural beauty. Even a single figure could make one's imagination run wild. And this woman displayed her charm to the extreme through all kinds of small body movements. She swayed her beautiful bottom, swaying left and right lightly. She was so seductive that one couldn't control himself. With a light twist, the curve of her bottom, which was like a peach, was revealed. The curve was like a hill, showing off the charm of a woman, making one want to reach out and touch it, personally experiencing the fullness, elasticity, and softness. Ling Han guarded his mind. This was also a great enchantress. What surprised him was that the black-clothed maidservant had clearly addressed this woman as madam, but she did not have the hairstyle of a married woman. Normally, a married woman would have her hair tied up in a bun. It was impossible for an unmarried young woman to have such a hairstyle. Meanwhile, her black hair was loose like a waterfall, revealing a bit of snow white on her neck. The black and white formed a strong contrast. It was none of his business. Ling Han immediately said in his mind, could it be that she wasn't married so he had to take her as his wife? There was naturally no need to take it to heart. The carriage was so small, but Lin Yuqi felt as if she had walked for a long time. Her enchanting and sexy figure was completely engraved in Ling Han's mind. Only then did she elegantly turn around, smiling, and say, "Young Master Ling, please sit." This smile was like 100 flowers blooming, and the whole carriage became much brighter. Ling Han smiled faintly, sat down, and said, "Madam, what business do you have with me?" He was in a hurry to go to the water element valley to find the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, so he really didn't want to waste time. Seeing the impatience in his eyes, Lin Yuqi was so angry that her nose almost twisted. She was proud of her charm and loved to tease people, making them infatuated with her and show her ugly side. She never denied that she was a bewitching woman. She was just this cold and heartless. Who asked her to be so beautiful and enchanting so she could be so willful? But Ling Han actually dared to show impatience to her. This was a slap to her face. If Ling Han only showed impatience on his face, then she could conclude that he was just putting on an act, using the tactic of loosening the reins only to grasp them better. He could also be considered an experienced playboy. However, right now, Ling Han's expression was completely calm, and the hint of impatience was revealed in his eyes. This led Lin Yuqi to believe that he really didn't want to see her. Moreover, Lin Yuqi was used to teasing men. As such, she was able to easily detect whether or not the other party had any inappropriate thoughts towards her. She was pissed. Lin Yuqi calmed herself down. How could it be that a bewitching woman like her was unable to seduce a young man? She didn't hold back at all as she flashed a bright smile. It was as if even refined iron could be melted into a soft, alluring smile. "Can't I just invite young Master Ling for a chat if there's nothing going on?" His voice was languid, and his hair seemed to have grown a pair of little hands, gently caressing his hair, making him feel hot. Ling Han shook his head and said, "If Madam doesn't have any instructions, then I will take my leave." He stood up and acted as if he was about to leave. Oi! Oi! Lin Yuqi was really about to explode in anger. With a flash, she appeared in front of Ling Han. Her speed was extraordinarily fast, causing Ling Han's expression to stiffen. This delicate and flirtatious woman was actually a great expert. He hadn't even seen her flash and turn clearly. If she had suddenly attacked him, it was extremely likely that he would have been struck. However, her breasts that were about to burst through her clothes were still trembling in front of him, almost crashing into him. This caused Ling Han to involuntarily frown, and he took a step back. He had already incurred enough love debts, so he naturally wouldn't abandon a woman who had already become his lover. However, he definitely didn't want to attract new partners. Seeing this, Lin Yuqi couldn't help but narrow her eyes. Her eyes narrowed into a slit, but it was enough to trap all the men in the world. She giggled and said in a flirtatious tone, "What are you afraid of? Are you worried that I will eat you up?" "Indeed." Ling Han nodded without any reservation, and said, "Madam, please conduct yourself with dignity." Lin Yuqi giggled wantonly, and her chest shook in waves, causing one to be dazzled. He wanted to transform into a wild beast, pounce on this seductive beauty, and personally measure the size and feel of those two breasts. People say that a wife is inferior to a concubine, and a concubine is inferior to a mistress. "Hee, do you want to have a taste of someone else's wife?" she murmured softly, her voice full of temptation. "Brat, take the bait. If you show even the slightest bit of disgraceful behavior, I will beat you to death, then take you as a slave and make you work hard for the rest of your life. You dare to have any improper thoughts about me?" Ling Han smiled and said, "Madam, have you drunk too much? You're quite drunk." "All right, I don't have time to play games with you. If you still don't move aside, I will have no choice but to destroy your steed." Lin Yuqi was at a loss for words. This guy had still rejected her. Ooh. She suddenly collapsed to the ground and began to sob. "What the hell are you up to now? I didn't even touch you, so why do you look like you've been violated? It's best not to provoke me. Go." Ling Han was just about to raise his foot when his vision blurred. Lin Yuqi, who had been sitting on the ground and sobbing just a moment ago, had once again blocked his path. This woman's strength was truly a bit unfathomable, and her obstruction made Ling Han unable to fathom or guess what was going on. "You're bullying me," Lin Yuqi said in a sobbing tone. However, she was a seductive beauty in the first place, and her tear-stained appearance instantly caused one to feel a strong urge to ravage her. This kind of high and mighty noblewoman was the best at stimulating a man's desire to destroy and conquer. He really wanted to tear her clothes apart and make her submit to him. Ling Han bared his teeth. This femme fatale's charm was truly not small, causing him to overthink again. He hurriedly thought of Empress Luan Xing. When that exquisite beauty appeared, Lin Yuqi immediately lost her luster. In front of him, she was completely ordinary, no longer possessing the slightest bit of allure. The Empress could actually use her as a mind-calming medicine? This was amazing. Lin Yuqi was once again rendered speechless. I've already used my trump card, yet you still look like you're disdainful? She was at her wit's end. Could it be that she had to strip? She was only playing. She was playing with a man's feelings, and she was playing with a man's pity. She had no intention of playing with herself at all. Young Master Ling, please sit, she suddenly said with a serious expression. There was not a single tear on her seductive and beautiful face. Ling Han was slightly driven mad. Say, are we familiar? Is it really okay for you to play like this? However, this woman's strength was unfathomable. If she refused to let him leave, then Ling Han would have no other choice but to use the Black Tower. However, ever since he found out about the Celestial Realm, Ling Han had become more careful. He wanted to avoid exposing the secret of the Black Tower even more. What kind of existence was the Black Tower? The reincarnation tree needed 12 trillion years to grow, but it only needed 3 years in the Black Tower. Although it hadn't reached its full potential, it was already extremely nature-defying. In the Celestial Realm, it should also be an extraordinary precious treasure, right? He hadn't even advanced into the Genesis tier yet. If the elites of the Celestial Realm knew that he possessed the Black Tower, wouldn't that be seeking death? Chapter 1238. What do you want, madam? Ling Han asked in a low voice. He still didn't know her identity. Lin Yuqi smiled sweetly and said, I am the shopkeeper of the Treasure Forest Pavilion. Ling Han felt a little strange. Such a bewitching beauty with unfathomable power was only the shopkeeper of an alchemical store? He grumbled in his mind, but his expression didn't change as he said, So it's shopkeeper Lin? TSK, I don't like this title. Lin Yuqi shook her head and sat down in an incredibly graceful position. Then she crossed her legs, revealing a long leg from her high-slit dress. It was long, slender, and as white as ivory. Because this carriage was very luxuriously decorated, the floor was covered with a thick fur carpet. She didn't even wear shoes, revealing a beautiful foot. Her 5 delicate toenails were painted bright red, complementing her snow-white foot. If one had some special fetish, they would definitely want to kneel and lick it. More importantly, she was lightly swaying her leg, and amidst the waves of fragrance, one's eyes couldn't help but wander into her dress, wanting to see more. Unfortunately, they could only see a tiny bit of her fair thigh. Why don't you call me big sister? Lin Yuqi pressed her fingers together, revealing her snow-white teeth and hazy eyes. It wasn't the wine that intoxicated her. She was intoxicated. Madam Lin. Ling Han was unmoved. Big sister Lin is fine too. Lin Yuqi was quite tenacious. Madam Lin, Ling Han insisted. Lin Yuqi couldn't help but sigh. She had truly never seen a man like this. He was so cold and indifferent, and even she was slightly curious about him. She knew that when a woman became curious about a man, it was a sign of danger, and it was very likely that she would fall for him. However, she was confident that she could definitely control herself and make him fall for her. All right. Lin Yuqi finally didn't try to pester him. Little brother Han, do you know how much trouble you will attract by refining the Berserk Blood Spirit pill? The corner of Ling Han's mouth twitched. This woman didn't give in at all. What? Okay. Although she didn't ask him to call her sister, she called him little brother Han. Wasn't that the same? He was too lazy to argue with the other party. This would only lead the topic further and further away. Moreover, this woman was obviously a good talker. He could not allow himself to be led into the ditch by the other party. What kind of trouble? He asked. The Berserk Blood Spirit pill can raise one's cultivation level by a subminor level at the Sun-Moon tier. And it's known as the saintly medicine of the Sun-Moon tier. As long as one hasn't reached the peak stage of the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, they'll definitely target little brother Han, Lin Yuqi said sweetly, not holding back at all to display her seductive charm in front of Ling Han. Ling Han smiled and said, since that's the case, shouldn't those Sun-Moon tier elites be polite and respectful to me? Lin Yuqi laughed in an unbridled manner, allowing Ling Han's eyes to enjoy another round of tumultuous waves. She shook her head and said, little brother Han doesn't have any background, and the Han Lin Pavilion is only a small temple, so how could it possibly intimidate others? Once the news spreads, it won't be long before little brother Han is captured and forced to concoct alchemical pills all day long. Little brother Han can't possibly think that alchemists can do whatever they want in the world just because they have a transcendent status, right? Of course not. The reason why alchemists had a transcendent status was because of the needs of cultivators. Since this status was given by cultivators, whether or not they acknowledged this kind of status depended on the mood of cultivators. An alchemist without the support of a powerful background was really only a tool for concocting alchemical pills. Ling Han smiled and asked, then what suggestion does Madam have? Join the Treasure Forest Pavilion, Lin Yuqi suddenly said with a serious expression. Just then, she had been so flirtatious and seductive that she wanted to charm him to death, yet she had suddenly become so businesslike and serious. This kind of contrast was too great, and even Ling Han found it a little hard to accept. Ling Han shook his head and said, although the Treasure Forest Pavilion is powerful, and can even rival the heavens, I can't possibly leave the Han Lin Pavilion. A mesmerizing smile spread across Lin Yuqi's face again, and she said, I'm not asking little brother Han to leave the Han Lin Pavilion. Since little brother Han can become the Grand Elder of the Han Lin Pavilion, why can't you also be a guest elder of the Treasure Forest Pavilion? Ling Han was astonished. This was really a great gift. The Treasure Forest Pavilion was definitely a colossus, and its branches were spread all over the Cloud Apex planet. Even the Crimson Flame Emperor had to give it some face. Then with the protection of this plaque, what Sun-Moon tier would dare to touch a single hair on Ling Han's head? However, Ling Han wasn't worried that some force would really capture him and force him to concoct alchemical pills. Instead, he thought of the 5 sects. The 5 sects had been able to establish themselves in the immortal realm for so many years, and moreover, they had refined the lower realm into so many realm pills. Could it be that no one in the immortal realm really knew about them? Perhaps there was a stronger force behind them? If Ling Han was alone, then after he clashed with the 5 sects, they would definitely ask for help from the force behind them if they were no match for him. However, if Ling Han also brought out the Treasure Forest Pavilion, then would the force behind the 5 sects still dare to make a move? Even if the 5 sects didn't have the support of such a force, they would still have some allies, right? The Treasure Forest Pavilion was enough to intimidate these people and make them watch without doing anything. Not bad, not bad. This identity was very useful. With this thought, Ling Han nodded and said, then I'll do as you say. Thank you, madam. Lin Yuqi smiled sweetly, then raised a finger, and said, however, I have a condition. Ling Han nodded. She naturally wouldn't help him for no reason, so it was very normal for her to have a condition. He asked what condition. If it wasn't too harsh, he would agree. However, if she wanted him to sacrifice himself, that was absolutely impossible. However, Lin Yuqi's condition was not no in the slightest. Choose one of the 2 options. The first option is to refine a berserk blood spirit pill for me every 10 years. The second option is to teach Xinyan the refinement method. These 2 conditions were really not simple. Ling Han pondered for a moment, and then said, Madam, you can obtain the Red Rain Divine King fruit. This is the key to refining the berserk blood spirit pill. Without this main ingredient, everything would be useless. If I couldn't obtain it, how could I dare to make such a condition? Lin Yuqi said confidently. Ling Han nodded slowly and said, all right, I can teach the refinement method to Miss Han. If he accepted the first condition, then he would be tied to the Treasure Forest Pavilion for the rest of his life. As such, he might as well choose the second condition. Although teaching someone to refine pills would take a very long time, it would be something that could be done once and for all. Moreover, he only had to copy the pill recipe to Han Xinyan, and when she had more or less grasped it, he would take some time to teach her. To him it wouldn't take too much time. However, Lin Yuqi was slightly disappointed. Ling Han's reply once again proved that her charm was ineffective. Otherwise, he should have chosen the first condition. Wouldn't he be able to see her a few more times then? This damn brat. I don't believe it. Chapter 1240. After fighting fiercely for a while, Ling Han and Ma Zhang stopped fighting at the same time. Neither of them had fought seriously, and were wary of each other. Who knew what killing moves the other was hiding? Brat, we will meet again. Ma Zhang left with the two soldiers. Of course we will meet again. You still have to rebuild this courtyard for me. Ling Han called out from behind. Ma Zhang almost stumbled. This brat really could not forget. Fuck, he was not the only one to blame. Ling Han watched the other leave and did not pursue. Obviously, the other had pounced on empty air, and did not know the whereabouts of the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. This was the reason why he did not tangle with the other. Furthermore, he knew the other's identity in any case. He was a subordinate of Great General Xia. Great General Xia should be Xia Qian, one of the 4 great generals of the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire. It was said that he was an Eternal River Tier elite, though he did not know exactly what level he was at. If such an elite did not say it himself, who could estimate his cultivation level? Since that was the case, he could run, but the temple could not. Ling Han turned back. Perhaps Kong Xiaoyuan and the others knew where the heavenly phoenix divine maiden would go. They might even have gone to the Han Lin Pavilion, and he just happened to miss them. 2 days later, he returned to Big Trade City. Master. Kong Xiaoyuan immediately called out when he saw him, his expression filled with nervousness and panic. What is it? Ling Han asked. A letter from Master's wife. Kong Xiaoyuan handed over a letter. Ling Han was anxious in the first place and hurriedly snatched it. His eyes swept over it, and he soon understood the whole story. The matter was actually very simple. In order to increase their status, the Cloud Phoenix sect intended to establish a relationship with Great General Xia. But would a mighty Eternal River Tier elite care about a Sun Moon Tier force? Then, even if they could not establish a relationship with Great General Xia, they could use a roundabout way to save the country. Thus, they sought out the 7th-generation grandson of Great General Xia, Xia Donglai. Xia Donglai was a very outstanding young man among the descendants of the Xia clan. He had cultivated for less than 100,000 years, and was already in the consummate level of the Sun Moon Tier. He had already grasped some authority in the Xia clan, and if he could break through to the heavenly body tier, he would become an important figure in the Xia clan. The Cloud Phoenix sect wanted to form a marriage alliance with the Xia family, and the other party was this Prince Xia. Xia Donglai had accepted the invitation, and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden had also been sent back by her sect. In the end, Xia Donglai fell in love with the heavenly phoenix divine maiden at first sight. A few days after returning to the imperial capital, he sent someone to deliver a letter, saying that he wanted to take the heavenly phoenix divine maiden as his concubine. For an important successor like him, it was not up to him to choose the official wife. He had to choose someone who would be helpful to the Xia family through marriage. For example, loyal subordinates or powerful officials of equivalent strength. As a result, it was naturally impossible for the tiny Cloud Phoenix sect to become the first wife, but at least she would be a legitimate concubine. She would still have a rather high status, and from the perspective of the Cloud Phoenix sect, this was climbing the social ladder. The Cloud Phoenix sect naturally agreed happily, but how could the heavenly phoenix divine maiden be willing? She claimed to be the widow of the Ling family, which was a declaration and a form of persistence. It was just that even though she had the strength to resist the Cloud Phoenix sect now, compared to a colossus like the Xia family, she was simply indescribably weak. Thus, she decided to go to the Two-Realm battlefield. That was the only place where the Xia clan's forces could not reach. When Kong Xiaoyuan received the letter, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden should have already arrived at the Two-Realm battlefield. Ling Han was furious. They actually wanted to force his wife to remarry? Wasn't this making him a cuckold? This Cloud Phoenix sect was really despicable. For their own benefit, they actually forced a good woman into prostitution. And Xia Donglai, who dared to steal his wife, he would not be satisfied if he did not castrate him 10 times. I want to go to the Two-Realm battlefield immediately. Ling Han made a prompt decision. The two-realm battlefield was a slaughterhouse of life. Every year, every month, and even every day there were innumerable people who died in battle there. Though the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's bloodline was powerful, and she had already reached the consummate level of the sun-moon tier, in the two-realm battlefield, this bit of strength of hers should not be enough. If the heavenly phoenix divine maiden was even slightly injured, he would definitely skin Xia Donglai alive later. As for the Cloud Phoenix sect, there was no need to mention it. It was fated to be flattened by him in the first place. Master, let's go too, Kong Xiu Yuan and Yong Yuan Wang hurriedly said. Ling Han shook his head and said, "You two are not cultivators, so why are you joining in the fun? Concoct pills properly. When I return, if you two still have not advanced into level 6 alchemists, just wait for a beating." Ah! The two of them screamed in pain. Advancing from level 5 to level 6 required at least tens of thousands of years of accumulation, and they were far from that level. Ling Han ignored them. Now that the conflict between the Hanlin Pavilion and the Treasure Forest Pavilion had been resolved, it did not matter even if he was not here. However, he had to keep his word. He decided to make a trip to the Treasure Forest Pavilion first, and pass the pill recipe for the Berserk Blood Spirit pill to Han Xinyan. Then, he would go to the two-realm battlefield. In any case, it would only take him a short trip. Yun Yong Yuan and Kong Xiu Yuan naturally supported Ling Han in finding their master's wife. They both nodded. On one hand, they had to protect the Hanlin Pavilion and complete the task that Ling Han had given them. They had to buy as much level 5 godly metal as possible, and on the other hand, they had to concoct pills with all their might and become level 6 alchemists. Ling Han set off alone, and did not alert his two elder brothers. He did not bring his disciple Ding Ping either. Even his 4 followers were left behind in Big Trade City. The two-realm battlefield was really too dangerous. Only the Azura Demon Emperor and the old ginseng were in the Black Tower. For others, there was no spiritual qi in the Black Tower, so it was not suitable for cultivation. Only the reincarnation tree could allow them to comprehend Tao. However, it was different for the old ginseng. That was because he was a godly medicine of heaven and earth, and the Black Tower also had the ability to accelerate the growth of plants. Although it was not as exaggerated for him, the benefits were still very great. Thus, when he had nothing to do, he liked to stay in the Black Tower and absorb that kind of power. Moreover, he would take root under the reincarnation tree, and he could comprehend Tao while he was at it. His progress was very fast and he was just about to advance to the sun-moon tier. Of course, it was impossible for the old ginseng to focus on cultivation. He would often come out and tease young women in Big Trade City. As long as they were slightly beautiful, there was practically no one who could escape the old ginseng's demonic claws. Ling Han quickly arrived at the Treasure Forest Pavilion. Lin Yuqi had clearly made arrangements for him. When he appeared, he saw that the people in the shop all respectfully addressed him as Elder Ling. They were incredibly respectful. "Yo, did you miss me?" Lin Yuqi walked over with a fragrant wind. She directly stood in front of Ling Han, her perky breasts only 1 or 2 inches away from Ling Han. Ling Han looked down and said, "I'm here to find Han Xinyan. I'm here to teach her the pill recipe for the Berserk Blood Spirit pill." Lin Yuqi was infuriated. In Ling Han's eyes, was she inferior to that immature, flat-chested little girl? Calm down, calm down. She consoled herself. She waved her hand, and had someone take Ling Han to find Han Xinyan. Meanwhile, she racked her brains. How could she make a block of wood come to his senses? This is so difficult. Under the guidance of a maidservant, Ling Han entered a backyard. This was clearly a private area, and only beautiful maidservants would occasionally appear. There were no outsiders here. Reading on a cell phone was more refreshing. Chapter 1241. Young Mistress Han is the madam's distant niece. The servant girl who led the way was very nosy, and she continued to talk about Lin Yuqi and Han Xinyan. In any case, the two of them were very close. Otherwise, Han Xinyan wouldn't have come to such a small city for no reason. After leading Ling Han to a courtyard, the servant girl curtsied and said, "Young Mistress Han should be meditating inside, so I don't dare to disturb her. Young master, please go and knock on the door yourself." After saying this, she turned around and left. How irresponsible. Ling Han knocked on the door, knocking. After a while he finally heard the sound of footsteps. Creak, the door opened, and a person who was almost completely naked appeared. It was Han Xinyan. Fuck, even she wants to tempt me. Ah! Han Xinyan suddenly screamed. Pong, the door immediately closed. Ling Han touched his nose. He almost bumped into the door. After a short while the doors opened again and Han Xinyan stormed out. Of course she was wearing clothes this time, and she wielded a sword in her hand. She slashed at Ling Han and shouted, "How dare you!" Ling Han hurriedly dodged. This woman was indeed very talented in alchemy, but she didn't have the corresponding ability in martial art. Ling Han only shook his heaven's might slightly, and his opponent's body went limp. How could she still attack? Don't misunderstand, I'm only here to teach you the refinement method of the Berserk Blood Spirit pill, he said with a smile. Han Xinyan paused, and slashed a few more times before sheathing her sword. She scolded, "Evil thief." Ling Han sighed and said, "I didn't do anything to you, did I? I just knocked normally, and you ran out completely naked." Han Xinyan couldn't help but blush. She had a bad habit, and that was to strip naked when studying pill recipes. Only then would she be able to gain inspiration. Furthermore, this was Lin Yuqi's inner courtyard, and there wasn't a single man here. Thus, she naturally wasn't afraid of exposing herself. However, who knew that a man would suddenly appear and strip her naked? How embarrassing! She glared fiercely at Ling Han and said, "Never mention this matter again." She was not a rude and unreasonable person and knew that Ling Han was not at fault. However, she was naturally extremely displeased. Those with small breasts also have small tolerance. Ling Han thought to himself that this woman was really flat-chested. In fact, he wouldn't be able to see anything even if she stripped naked. If she only had breasts, she could totally pass herself off as a man. "Alright," he replied calmly. He was also afraid that the other party would latch onto him and say things like, "If you were naked, I would only marry you." He tossed out a book and said, "This is the pill recipe for the Berserk Blood Spirit pill. Study it on your own first. I still have some matters to attend to, so I have to leave Big Trade City for a while. If there's anything you don't understand, you can write it down and ask me when I return." Han Xinyan was infuriated. "We're both level 8 alchemists, yet you're acting like you're going to teach me? Are you treating me like a junior?" However, now that she had obtained the pill recipe for the Berserk Blood Spirit pill, she was too embarrassed to fall out with Ling Han. Thus, she could only put the pill recipe away in displeasure. At this moment, she really didn't dare to stubbornly say that she didn't want it. Ling Han waved his hand and left the Treasure Forest Pavilion. He set out toward the border between the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire and the Blue Cloud Imperial Empire. That was where the two-realm battlefield was located. There was a connection between the Netherworld and the Immortal Realm here. The Netherworld could invade the Immortal Realm from here, and vice versa. The cloud-piercing shuttle was no longer suitable for traveling between planets. Thankfully, Ling Han had already grasped the star-plucking step. Added with the lightning technique that he had learned from the Heavenly Tribulation, his speed was astonishingly fast. A mere 12 days later, he arrived at the two-realm battlefield. Before he set out, he first refined a Berserk Blood Spirit pill. He spent 3 days to digest the effects of the pill, and the red sun inside his body also suddenly expanded, allowing him to advance into the middle stage of the low extreme. This kind of alchemical pill was called Berserk, because its effects were indeed violent. Even though Ling Han's physique had reached the level of level 6 godly metal, his skin and flesh were still lacerated by the impact of the pill, and a few of his godly bones were even broken. No wonder. Unless one was at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, other Sun-Moon tier cultivators had to be under the care of an elite before they could ingest this pill. Otherwise, they would only be blasted to death by the violent effects of the pill. It would be too unjust to die from ingesting this pill. And after ingesting this pill, with Ling Han's penetrating ability as the Alchemy Emperor, he sensitively discovered that alchemical poison had been left in his body. If he ingested another Berserk Blood Spirit pill, not only would it not be able to raise his cultivation level, but it would instead cause him to die from the poison. What kind of concept was a Berserk Blood Spirit pill? It could raise a Sun-Moon tier cultivator by a subminor level. If it exploded in an explosive manner, what kind of destruction would it cause? It could practically rival the full power attack of a low-level heavenly body tier cultivator. Which sun-moon tier cultivator could withstand this kind of toxicity? Ling Han was also at his wits' end. He observed the rate at which the alchemical poison dissipated day after day, and came to the conclusion that this would probably take as long as 3 years. In other words, if he didn't have any special methods to dispel the alchemical poison in his body, he would have to wait 3 years before he could ingest a second berserk blood spirit pill. But when he thought about it again, that meant that he would need at most 50 years to reach the peak stage of the sun-moon tier. What kind of terrifying speed was this? How long was the lifespan of sun-moon tier cultivators? The consummate level was 4 million years. A whole 4 million years, yet he could only use 50 years to cultivate. Wasn't this terrifying? Wasn't this fast enough? Of course he couldn't compare to Hunyeo. The level of martial art in the celestial realm was higher, and nurturing Genesis tiers was perhaps like nurturing shattering void tier cultivators in the immortal realm. Although it wasn't something that could be achieved with a wave of a hand, it probably wouldn't be that difficult either. On the side of the immortal realm in the two-realm battlefield, a bridgehead was built, and this bridgehead was called Wolffang City. The purpose of Wolffang City's existence was to provide a resting place for the warriors battling against the Netherworld. It was a safe haven, and at the same time it was also a stronghold. Once Wolffang City was lost, then the army of the Netherworld would march straight in and bring disaster to the entire Cloud Apex planet. There were only 2 imperial empires on the Cloud Apex planet, and they were the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire and the Blue Cloud Imperial Empire. Thus, the main forces here were naturally the armies of these 2 imperial empires. Additionally, all cultivators and demonic beasts that had reached the immortal level were obligated to join the two-realm battlefield. There were a few famous armies here, such as the Purple Moon Army under the command of the Purple Moon Divine Maiden, the Everlasting Wind Army under the command of the Wind Rider King, and the Arhat Army under the command of the Wide Travel Monk King. They had all established their reputation in the great battle against the creatures of the Netherworld. Coming to the two-realm battlefield, cultivators could freely choose. One was to join the official army and fight as a soldier. When they had accumulated enough merit, they could honorably retire. The second was to act alone and hunt down creatures of the Netherworld. This could similarly allow them to accumulate merit. Merit, this was the currency used in the two-realm battlefield. Though fighting against the invasion of the Netherworld was a righteous cause, they couldn't possibly make people sacrifice their lives and shed blood with just a few words. Thus, the concept of merit came into being. One could use merit to exchange for various alchemical pills, god tools, and even cultivation techniques. And once the total value of one's merit reached a certain level, one could choose to retire. As mentioned earlier, joining the two-realm battlefield and fighting against the invasion of the Netherworld was the duty of all immortal level cultivators. Everyone had to serve in this military service. If one exceeded the time limit and did not fulfill it, they would be beheaded if they were caught. Chapter 1242. Normally, after advancing into the Mountain River tier 100,000 years, one had to join the two-realm battlefield. However, some people were prodigies, and they might advance into the Sun-Moon tier after 30,000 or 40,000 years. Then there was also a rule that within 1 million years of advancing into the Sun-Moon tier, one had to join the army to fight against enemies. Even more prodigies could advance into the Heavenly Body tier within 1 million years. Then they had to join the army within 1 million years. In any case, they had to serve in the army unless they were strong enough to resist the two empires. This kind of deadline was to give prodigies enough time to grow, so that they wouldn't die in vain on the two-realm battlefield. In the two-realm battlefield, the most useful thing was merit points. How to retire? By relying on merit points. Mountain River tier required 100 merit points, Sun-Moon tier required 10,000, Heavenly Body tier required 1 million, and Eternal River tier required a terrifying 100 million. Why was the difference so great? Very simple. The difficulty of obtaining merit points for cultivators of different cultivation levels was completely different. For example, killing a Netherworld being in the low extreme of the Mountain River tier would only give 1 point, but killing one in the medium extreme would give 5 points, the high extreme 10 points, and the consummate level 20 points. Theoretically, A mountain river tier cultivator only had to kill 5 netherworld beings in the consummate level of the same cultivation level to successfully retire. And after reaching the sun moon tier, the low extreme would provide 100 merit points. Moreover, the 2-realm battlefield naturally didn't allow people to fish in troubled waters. If they didn't accumulate merit points for a long time, they would be punished accordingly. After understanding all this, Ling Han began to speculate in his mind. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden had joined the 2-realm battlefield so early, and there was only one goal: to hide from the Xie clan. Thus she would definitely join an official army. Otherwise, as a wandering soldier, if she encountered members of the Xie clan, it would be difficult for her to escape the fate of being forcefully captured. Then which army would she join? Purple Moon Army. Very simple. Aside from the Purple Moon Army, the other armies were mainly male. In the world of martial art there were naturally more male cultivators, and the proportion was not just a little large. Thus, in the 2-realm battlefield there were very few females and the armies were mainly male. Only the Purple Moon Army was different. Because the commander was a strong woman, her army was made up entirely of women. Ling Han made some inquiries, and found out that men were not qualified to join the Purple Moon Army. They only accepted women. Moreover, in order to prevent others from harassing them, the Purple Moon Army also strictly forbade men from entering their campsite. Those who violated this rule would be castrated, and those who violated this rule would be killed. Thus, there was no way that Ling Han would rashly run to the Purple Moon Army and say that he wanted to find his wife. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden would either become a widow of the Ling family or become a widow. He decided to wait outside the campsite of the Purple Moon Army. Once the Purple Moon Army moved out, he would follow them. After he found the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, he would go over to talk to her. But even if they did, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden couldn't possibly leave with him immediately. If they left the 2-realm battlefield without accumulating enough merit points, they would be considered deserters. Deserters wouldn't have a good time no matter where they went. Then, since he was going to stay here for a long time, Ling Han first went to Wulfang City and registered an identity for himself. In the future, he would be able to accumulate merit points when he killed enemies. It was very simple. He would kill beings of the netherworld, store them in his spatial spirit tool, and bring them back to Wulfang City. There would naturally be people who would check and record the merit points. And because of this method, some people here would go down the wrong path. They would rob others, steal spatial spirit tools, and even kill others to keep them quiet. There are scum everywhere. Ling Han thought. He arrived at a place 50 kilometers away from the campsite of the Purple Moon Army, sat down alone, and quietly waited for the Purple Moon Army to move out. The environment here was very poor. The spiritual chi here was barren, and there was a kind of eerie feeling. Moreover, the regulations of the Great Tao had become very weak. Ling Han had tried before and he could just barely fly. It should be known that flying in the immortal realm required cultivation level of the heavenly body tier. The 2 realms clashed, and even the regulations of heaven and earth were affected. If this was the case here, then what about further ahead? The point of contact between the netherworld and the immortal realm was tens of thousands of kilometers away. Moreover, the further ahead one went, the greater the influence one would receive. He changed his position, yet discovered that the regulations here had become strangely strong again. To say nothing of flying, even the height he could jump was far lower than it was in his normal state. This was because the regulations of heaven and earth had not only been weakened, but had also become unbalanced. The suppression in some places had become weaker, while the suppression in other places had become stronger. Then, if one was not familiar with this kind of change, the influence would be too great. If one was not careful, they could collide into something. And in battle, the influence would naturally be even greater. Brat, what is this place? The old ginseng came out of the Black Tower to take a breath of fresh air. However, when he arrived at this place, he couldn't help but pale with fright. "Oh, what kind of damned place have you brought Grandpa Ginseng to?" This place was an ominous place. There were strange demonic clouds dancing in front of them, and they exuded an evil aura. Why had they come here for no reason? "Brat, you're crazy," the old ginseng said as he pointed at Ling Han. Ling Han was not angered and merely calmly said, "Come, I'm going to call Hunyo over. I'm going to cook a large pot of old ginseng soup." The old ginseng's expression instantly changed. He was really afraid of that little girl. She was definitely a true glutton, and didn't mind cold or raw food. He hurriedly smiled obsequiously and said, "Brat, what kind of friendship do we have? If there's a girl, let's go together. We're brothers in this life, so there's no need for pleasantries." Ling Han only chuckled, causing the old ginseng to awkwardly retreat to the side. Ling Han simply summoned the Azura Demon Emperor as well. However, that puppet had lost an arm, causing a great deal of the formation patterns that had been engraved on it to be missing, causing its battle prowess to drop greatly. However, this was all right. Ling Han had also advanced into the Sun Moon tier, and did not need this kind of battle prowess anymore. What he needed was the Azura Demon Emperor's understanding of the Netherworld. The more he knew about the Netherworld, the more confident he would be in battling the beings of the Netherworld in the future. Moreover, if he wanted to break into the Celestial Realm, he had to grasp the power of creation and destruction at the same time. Ling Han also had to enter the Netherworld and comprehend the regulations of heaven and earth there. Only now did the old ginseng know what this place was, and he instantly looked like he was about to cry. However, when he heard Ling Han mention the Purple Moon Army, this perverted old ginseng's face blossomed, and he said, "Grandpa Ginseng will go scout out the situation." As he said this, he broke into a run, his speed ridiculously fast. Needless to say, this guy had definitely gone to the female army camp to scout out information. The old ginseng had not advanced into the Sun Moon tier yet, but his speed was extraordinarily fast. Moreover, he could travel underground, so even heavenly body tier elites might not be able to catch him. Meanwhile, Ling Han listened to the Azura Demon Emperor talk about the Netherworld. However, the Azura Demon Emperor was only in existence at the bottom of the Netherworld, so his knowledge was limited. Especially regarding the level of demon masters, he practically knew nothing. "Save me, brat. Hurry and save Grandpa Ginseng." 3 days later, the old ginseng's screams could be heard. He used his divine sense to call for help, but the transmission of his voice was far slower than the speed at which he was sprinting. "Ha ha ha ha. Hurry and come into Grandpa Rabbit's bowl." Ling Han stood up, and saw that the old ginseng was currently sprinting madly, and behind him was a rabbit that was half the height of a human. One in front and one behind, their speed was astonishingly fast. If it were not for the fact that Ling Han had formed the Eye of Truth, he would definitely not be able to catch a glimpse of either figure. Rabbit! Ling Han was incredibly astonished. It was actually that rabbit from the lower realm. How had it appeared here? Chapter 1244. Where are realm spirit stones usually found? Ling Han asked. Naturally, the place where the clash between the two realms is the strongest, Rabbit replied. Then it should be 5,000 kilometers ahead, Ling Han said. If they went any further, they would be in the territory of the Netherworld. This was the headquarters of the Immortal Realm, and the other side was the headquarters of the Netherworld. The closer they were, the more intense the conflict there was. The beings of the two realms all wanted to obtain realm spirit stones. At the end of the day, was this a war of invasion, a war of defense, or a war of pure interests? Ling Han shook his head. He couldn't be bothered to think about it. He had the reincarnation tree, so he didn't have much need for realm spirit stones. Moreover, his goal was to find the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Everything else could be set aside. He continued to wait for the Purple Moon Army to move. As for the old ginseng and rabbit, they actually put their arms around each other's shoulders after bickering for a while. It was as if they were close friends. Ling Han couldn't accept this. Rabbit and ginseng said that they were going to search for realm spirit stones, and they soon disappeared. Ling Han didn't mind either. As he waited, he continued to derive martial arts and pill formulas. Previously, he had obtained a large pile of ancient pill formulas. Although he had already become a level 8 alchemist, the number of pill formulas he knew was pitifully small. How could he be worthy of the title of Alchemy Emperor? He had the Azura Demon Emperor stand guard outside, and Ling Han entered the Black Tower. If the Purple Moon Army moved, the Azura Demon Emperor would cause a huge commotion nearby, and startle him. He comprehended under the reincarnation tree for an unknown period of time. Suddenly he felt a huge tremor nearby, and hurriedly exited the Black Tower. He saw the Azura Demon Emperor engaged in a fierce battle with a group of people. There were only 3 Sun Moon tier elites in this group, and the others were all at the Mountain River tier. However, the puppet that the Azura Demon Emperor had taken control of was already severely damaged. His cultivation level was only at the Mountain River tier, and his divine sense wasn't strong enough. Moreover, there were people among these people who were skilled in divine sense attacks, and they bombarded him with attacks. If it weren't for the fact that this puppet was at the Sun Moon tier, the Azura Demon Emperor would have died long ago. Ling Han couldn't help but feel annoyed. He leaped over and said, "Stop, Master." It was as if the Azura Demon Emperor had seen his savior, and he hurriedly charged toward Ling Han. He was about to be beaten to death, and now that Ling Han had appeared like a god, he was so moved that he was about to cry. But that group of people didn't stop. Instead, they all sneered. One of them said, "Wow, you actually dare to collude with the Netherworld's demons. How dare you?" These people actually discovered the true identity of the Azura Demon Emperor. Ling Han casually threw out a punch and forced these people back. He said, "This is my servant. What does he have to do with the Netherworld?" The Azura Demon Emperor hid behind Ling Han and used his divine sense to transmit his voice, saying, "Master, little Azura released my main body in order to keep an eye on the Purple Moon Army. However, I just so happened to be discovered by these people and they came to kill me." He was in the form of mist, so even if he couldn't fly in the God realm, he could still stretch his body and stand at a high place to better scout for information. He didn't expect that this would ruin things. Ling Han nodded. This wasn't the Azura Demon Emperor's fault. Instead, it was to better carry out his orders. "Sir, if you don't move aside, I'll treat you as a traitor of the God realm and execute you as well," the other person threatened. "Don't waste words with him. Maybe he's a fat sheep. Just kill him. Maybe he's the descendant of some great clan, and he has a lot of treasures on him." Greed appeared on these people's faces. Ling Han came to a sudden realization and said, "You guys should be looters, right? You specialize in robbing people who move alone." These people all chuckled coldly and said, "Since you've guessed it, then die." Although Ling Han was also at the Sun Moon tier, he was only at the middle stage of the low extreme after all. Moreover, he was alone, while they had 3 Sun Moon tier elites. Moreover, they had been here for many years and had also accumulated some wealth. They used their merit points to exchange for some treasures. If they really used them, they could even kill someone at the peak stage of the medium extreme. This was also one of the reasons why they dared to be so unbridled. Killing intent condensed in Ling Han's eyes. Since that was the case, there was no need for him to hold back, and he would kill them all. Together. This group of people didn't care about the rules of fighting alone. A dozen or so of them attacked Ling Han and the Azura Demon Emperor at the same time. Sabers flashed and swords flashed, and killing intent soared. Ling Han's expression darkened, and he said, "Instead of fighting the beings of the Netherworld, you're ambushing your own people here. You guys are really something." He flicked his finger and the head of a looter instantly exploded. His divine sense was also instantly shattered, and he died completely. Damn it. These thieves were all furious. Because it was only a Mountain River tier elite that had died, they didn't feel any fear, and they still attacked Ling Han madly. Ling Han clenched his fist. He punched and another person's head exploded, and even his divine sense was shattered. If one wanted to completely kill an immortal, they had to destroy their divine sense as well. Otherwise, the divine sense could be possessed, and if one could obtain a good body, perhaps their strength would be even greater. Pa. Heads exploded one after another, and blood soared into the sky. There were only a dozen or so thieves here, so how could they withstand Ling Han's slaughter? In the blink of an eye, there were only 3 Sun Moon tier thieves left. However, the legs of these 3 people were trembling. The young man in front of them was like a god of death. He killed one with each punch, and even though they were surrounded by him, he was still able to kill them easily. This kind of strength caused them to tremble in fear. He was too powerful. Damn it! One of the thieves roared in anger. Second, third, don't be so reluctant. Use your divine talismans or we'll die here today. He drew out a divine talisman and slapped it onto his chest. Suddenly, a crimson light radiated from his body, and boundless flames surged out, causing his aura to instantly become several times stronger. The other two also smiled viciously, and they both drew out divine talismans and slapped them onto their bodies. They had all cultivated the same cultivation technique, and were using the same type of divine talisman. They were all crimson flames soaring into the sky, and instantly possessed the strength of the peak stage of the medium extreme, or even the early stage of the high extreme. Die! The three of them pounced, wanting to kill Ling Han. Ling Han was shocked. This kind of divine talisman that could increase one's strength was very precious, but he could actually use it on these three thieves. They must have exchanged for it with merit points. No wonder so many people were still fighting here even after completing their service. Because aside from the shocking death rate, the two-realm battlefield was also a treasure land. As long as one could accumulate a large amount of merit points, they could exchange for any treasure. Using it on these three people. Hey, what a waste. Ling Han used a sliver of heaven's might. Pa pa pa. The three immediately knelt down, their bodies limp, and they actually didn't have the slightest bit of strength. They had only used divine talismans to increase their strength, but the strength of their divine sense hadn't changed at all. So how could they resist Ling Han's king tier might that was based on heavenly tribulation? Chapter 1245. Don't kill me. The three bandits were so frightened that tears flowed from their eyes. At this critical moment, their cowardly nature was completely revealed. This was because they were only pleading for themselves and did not care about the lives of their companions. What's the point of you living? Asked Ling Han indifferently. Master, let little Azura do it. The Azura demon emperor said, holding his breath. He had almost been killed by this group of people just then, so he naturally wanted to take revenge with his own hands. He was brimming with murderous intent. He was originally a demon from the netherworld, so killing a few people was not a burden to him at all. No, no. The three bandits cried out in alarm. Spare me. I have an ancient map that points to the location of an ancient treasury, said one of the bandits. What? The other two cried out in alarm. Didn't you say that the treasure map was lost? So you took it all for yourself. They rebuked one after another, filled with anger. This was an internal strife. The Azura demon emperor observed his expression, and knew that Ling Han's interest had been piqued. He immediately took advantage of Ling Han's power, and said, What treasure map? Hand it over immediately. If I hand it over, can you spare my life? The man asked cautiously. The Azura demon emperor smashed another bandit's head with a punch, and then threatened, Do you have the right to bargain? That person was so scared that his face turned green. He hurriedly said, Don't kill me. I'll bring you to the treasure map right now. You didn't bring it with you? The Azura demon emperor asked. No. That person hurriedly shook his head. Although they were companions, they did not trust each other. How could he possibly place the treasure map in his spatial spirit artifact? They could rob others, but naturally they could also be robbed by others. Absolutely precious items could not be carried by them, otherwise how could they have the right to bargain? If their spatial spirit tools were taken away, they would all be finished. The Azura demon emperor turned to look at Ling Han, and when he saw Ling Han's indifferent expression, he was instantly emboldened. He charged toward the other bandit. The bandit's head was smashed into smithereens, and blood splattered all over the remaining bandit's face. He was so scared that he almost wet his pants. Although they usually killed people ruthlessly, when such a thing happened to him, his legs immediately turned to jelly. The Azura demon emperor escorted the robber, while Ling Han walked behind him. With the robber leading the way, they arrived at a small mountain valley. The robber moved a boulder aside, and underneath it was a ring that was wedged in a crack of the boulder. If he hadn't found it himself, it would have been almost impossible to find the ring. The Azura demon emperor snatched the ring away before respectfully handing it over to Ling Han, a fawning expression on his face. Ling Han accepted it and infused his divine sense into it. He saw that there were indeed many things inside. There were true origin stones, a few cultivation techniques, a few pieces of godly metal, and finally a map. He took it out and asked, Where did this treasure map come from? I don't know. I only found this map when I was robbing a group of people. That's why I kept it, said the robber. Young master, can I leave now? Leave your sister. The Azure Demon Emperor immediately threw out a punch. The last robber was also killed. Ling Han didn't have the slightest bit of sympathy. This group of people specialized in robbing the people here, and their behavior was very hateful. They should have clenched their fists and fought, but they were harming their own people, which was incredibly annoying. Where is this place? Ling Han looked at the map. The area in the middle was circled with a red pen. It should be the location of the treasure, but the whole terrain was very unfamiliar. Speaking of treasure, I still have a set of coordinates. That was obtained in the 12 Heaven Mystery Realms. Ling Han remembered. Those 12 Heaven Mystery Realms were built by the 12 generals under the Heavenly River King. As long as one inherited a palace, they would be able to obtain the coordinates of that immortal realm. The supreme inheritance of the Heavenly River King was hidden there. Previously, Ling Han had always been on the Joint Peace Planet, so he naturally couldn't search for these coordinates, but now that he had come to the Cloud Apex planet, he could search for it. However, who is the Heavenly River King? The secret techniques I obtained in the Mystery Realm, whether it's the 9 Dragons Tyrant Body Art or the Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow, are all supreme techniques, at least for now. From this, it can be seen that the inheritance of the Heavenly River King is at least at the Heavenly Body tier. Oh right, I also obtained an egg in that mystery realm. With a thought from Ling Han, an egg immediately appeared in front of him. He had obtained this from the 12 Heaven Mystery Realms, and then kept it in the Black Tower. Because it hadn't changed, he had forgotten about its existence. There's vitality, which means it can still hatch. But how long will it take? This is the descendant of the Azure Flame Eagle, so logically, it shouldn't have not hatched after so long. Could it be because it was kept in the Black Tower? After all, though the space in the Black Tower can accommodate living beings, it lacks the necessary regulations of heaven and earth, so it can't be considered a true world. Moreover, it was left under the reincarnation tree all this time, and seems to have caused this egg to change mysteriously. Is this hatched Azure Flame Eagle still an Azure Flame Eagle? Why don't I just eat it? This thought flashed through Ling Han's mind, but he still decided to keep this egg. Perhaps if he took it out and exposed it to more sunlight, it should be able to hatch. He left the egg just like that while he himself sat on the rock and began to think. Breaking open a small world should be possible at the Sun Moon tier. But if I want to enter a small world, this should be very difficult because the regulations don't allow it. I have to suppress my own cultivation level, or sever my own cultivation level. Apart from those people from the celestial realm, when their strength reaches a certain level, they can ignore the regulations of a small world. That guy, the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire, can't also be from the celestial realm, right? The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire wanted him to get some true dragon horn, Heavenly Phoenix Feather, those were all saint-level beings, and from the tone of the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire, it seemed that he was very disdainful. Then, if he was a great elite from the celestial realm, then this was easy to understand. Fuck, what kind of place is the lower realm? Why did it attract so many monsters? Ling Han felt his head swell. The Azure Demon Emperor had said that the lower realm had already opened the sky once before, and then for some unknown reason, it had returned to become a small world, which was why Ling Han had opened the sky a second time. Perhaps I have to wait until I enter into the celestial realm to be qualified to understand this. At least I can be certain that Genesis tiers can't separate a piece of land from the immortal realm and transform it into a small world. Only those who have grasped the power of creation and destruction can do this. I have obtained the Black Tower, and it seems that I have also inherited a huge danger. Ling Han shook his head and planned to put away the egg, return to his original place, and continue to wait for the Purple Moon Army to move out. Shua! Right at this moment, a flash of sword light slashed toward Ling Han. Its might extremely terrifying, as if the heavens were collapsing. Die, evil thief! Chapter 1246. This sword was too fast. Even though the sword had already pierced through the air, the sound had yet to reach its destination. Ling Han clenched his fist and smashed it into the sword light. Instantly, the resplendent sword light shattered and a figure was forced back. However, that person had some skill. With a somersault, He dissipated the majority of Ling Han's punch's power and landed stably on the ground. It was a woman who looked to be in her 20s. She was quite beautiful, but her face was filled with arrogance. She was either a young miss or a pampered daughter of some sect who had been spoiled. Behind her, there were 7 other people quickly walking over. They were all men, but only one was a white-haired old man. The other 6 were all youths who exuded a heroic spirit. Junior apprentice sister. The 6 youths immediately ran over and surrounded the young beauty, their expressions filled with concern. Junior apprentice sister, are you all right? That fellow didn't injure you, did he? Damn it. He actually dared to touch my junior apprentice sister. These people were concerned for the beauty while glaring at Ling Han, as if they wanted to kill him with their gazes. They completely ignored the fact that it was the woman who had attacked first. Ling Han couldn't help but find it funny. This woman had inexplicably attacked him, and he had only been defending himself. Why did it seem like he had done something unforgivable? He shook his head. Don't you think you owe me an explanation and an apology? An explanation? An apology? Those people all sneered. He had injured their junior apprentice sister, and now he wanted them to explain and apologize? Had his head been kicked by a donkey? He's just a mere robber. Everyone has the right to kill him, but he still wants an explanation and an apology? How laughable, said one of the youths. Hearing that, Ling Han's anger actually subsided a bit. There really wasn't any need to follow any rules when attacking a robber. Otherwise, he would only be throwing his life away. But which eye of yours saw that he looked like a robber? You think I'm a looter? Ling Han shook his head. Your eyes are really bad. I need to treat them. You scoundrel, the map in your hand belongs to one of my senior brothers. If you weren't a looter, how could it have ended up in your hands? That woman had already caught her breath and immediately rebuked Ling Han. What a joke. Ling Han snorted. Can't I just kill the looters and take it from them? Young man, since that's the case, please return the map to us. The only old man spoke. His voice was low and deep, carrying with it a powerful aura. He was at the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, so he naturally didn't take Ling Han seriously. Ling Han laughed loudly in anger and said, Let's not talk about whether this map originally belonged to you, but since it was obtained by me, if you want to take it back, you should at least lower your attitude a little, right? I'm not your slave, but you're acting all high and mighty. What, do I owe you anything? Bullshit. A young man rebuked. This is originally ours, so shouldn't you return it to us? Ling Han scoffed. It's yours. This map may have existed for tens of millions of years, and is an antique. Its true owner died long ago, so how can you say it's yours? At most you just snatched it from somewhere. There's no need to be so self-righteous. Young man, are you asking for trouble? The old man humphed. Seventh uncle, don't waste words with this kind of person. Capture him. The woman said. Among those present, only she dared to speak like this. Who asked her to be favored? The old man thought for a moment and said, Fine, try not to hurt anyone. The 7 young men all smirked coldly. Try not to hurt anyone, and that was fine even if they did. The strength of this group was much stronger than the previous looters. Aside from the old man who was at the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, the 7 of them had also advanced into the Sun-Moon tier. Their strength ranged from the early stage of the low extreme to the peak stage, but none of them had advanced into the medium extreme. True, if they didn't have some strength, how would they dare to search for those looters? That being the case, this treasure map really did have some value. With a thought, Ling Han stored the treasure map and the egg into the Black Tower. Then he said coldly, Though you aren't looters, you aren't much better. I'll give you one last warning. Apologize to me, or you can pray for your own good. How laughable, you still dare to threaten us at this time. Just kill him. In any case, the spatial spirit tool can't run away. That's right, kill him. We are disciples of the Heaven's Sword Palace. The 7 people all said. Heaven's Sword Palace. Ling Han's killing intent instantly blazed. He hadn't gone to find trouble with the 5 sects, and he had already encountered them. They really had the demeanor of the 5 sects, so arrogant. He calmly said, Aren't you afraid that I have a backer that can destroy the Heaven's Sword Palace with a flip of my hand? Haha. Someone with a real backer wouldn't let you run around alone. There must be a protector protecting you in secret, a young man said with a scoff. Did he think they were idiots? They were very clear who they could offend and who they couldn't. Moreover, let me tell you one more thing, another young man said. All those who come from great clans and forces have a clear mark on them. He raised his sleeve, and there was a sword embroidered on it. It was very small, and if one didn't pay attention they wouldn't notice it. So that's how it is. Ling Han nodded and said, Thank you for this information, and as a reward for you, I will send you on your way. He wanted to topple the 5 sects, but he didn't have the thought of killing everyone because he thought that no matter how bad a sect was, there could still be people with righteous hearts. Thus, he only planned to disband the 5 sects, kill the higher-ups, and let the others leave. But these people in front of him, they made him want to kill. What shameless boasting! The 7 people all smirked coldly. Though they were young, which one of them hadn't cultivated for 200,000 or 300,000 years. Their hands were stained with who knew how much blood. So how could they be soft-hearted? The treasure map is very important, so we definitely can't leave anyone alive. Kill! The 7 people attacked, showing no mercy. Ling Han humphed coldly, and with a flick of his finger, sword chi rained down on the 7 people. He hadn't killed them before, not because he was soft-hearted, but because he didn't have the habit of killing indiscriminately. But now that these people wanted to seek death, he naturally didn't mind sending them on their way. Not good. The old man instantly paled when he saw Ling Han attack. This was too terrifying. It had only been a few flick of his finger, but the battle prowess that Ling Han had erupted with was almost on par with his. One had to realize that Ling Han was already in the middle stage of the low extreme, and his power could surpass 6 stars. Thus, his battle prowess was actually at the peak stage of the medium extreme. How terrifying was this? Pew pew pew, the 7 people's heads exploded from the rain of swords at the same time, and none of them had a complete corpse. Though the old man had moved, he was still a step too late. He could only watch as his 7 juniors were slaughtered. These were prodigies that the sect had nurtured for 100,000 or 200,000 years. The old man's heart was dripping with blood. He glared fiercely at Ling Han. Brat, I'm going to cut off your flesh piece by piece and feed it to the dogs. Chapter 1248. Old man, can we go in peace now? Ling Han smiled. The elder from the Heaven Sword Palace glared at Ling Han. Origin power surged out from his severed arm and took the shape of a hand. To a powerful immortal spirit, even if all 4 of his limbs were severed, he would not completely lose his ability to fight. However, he no longer had the courage to fight. He wanted to immediately return to the Heaven Sword Palace and report to the true higher-ups that Ling Han had appeared here. This was far too frightening. This brat was as freakish as a monster. If he was given a few more years, wouldn't he reach the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier? In fact, he might even reach the Heavenly Body tier. At that time, so what if the 5 sects joined forces? Who would be a match for him? Right now, there were still many experts in the 5 sects, and the most powerful ones even had battle prowess surpassing 4 stars. Any one of them could easily kill this brat. His life was very precious and he could not die here. The old man said to himself. He would never admit that he was afraid of death. Instead, he placed his life where it was most needed. However, even when he was at his peak, he was no match for Ling Han. Now that he had lost both of his arms, his battle prowess had been greatly reduced, and he still wanted to escape. Even though he was an elite of the Heaven Sword Palace, he was limited to the level of the Heaven Sword Palace, and he really did not have any trump cards on him. He had spent his entire life savings on that Tier 7 God artifact. Unfortunately, this God artifact could not protect him. The old man was going all out. He wanted to carve out a path of blood. As long as he could escape into Wolfang City, Ling Han would definitely not dare to attack him again. No matter what kind of grudges they had, Wolfang City forbade the beings of the immortal world from killing each other. Keep your gun pointed at the outside world. Ling Han sneered. Still trying to escape? He slashed out with his sword, and the divine demon sword slashed out tens of thousands of sword projections. This was not the mysterious 3,000, but rather the might of the divine demon sword itself. If this were not the case, how could it be called the future divine metal? Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sword shadows were like flames, startling the 9 heavens. The old man's rank 7 divine artifact danced on its own, covering the old man's retreat and fighting for a chance to escape. This was the difference between divine artifacts and weapons. They either had a weapon spirit or a martial art will, which was equivalent to having self-awareness. Ling Han unleashed his divine demon sword to defend himself. Meanwhile, he summoned his annihilating dragon star arrow. Xiu! The arrow shot out as fast as lightning. Puff blood blossomed from the old man's back. He fell to the ground and let out a shrill cry. The arrow had injured him quite badly. Meanwhile, the divine demon sword unleashed tens of thousands of sword projections, forcefully suppressing the level 7 god tool. It was truly hard to imagine that a tier 5 divine tool could suppress a tier 7 divine tool. This completely violated the laws of martial art. However, who asked the material of the divine demon sword to be so freakish? Ling Han dashed out and used his finger as a sword. The thunderbolt sword art was unleashed, and his killing intent was overflowing. His physique was equivalent to level 6 godly metal. Thus, the attack that he executed with his finger as a sword was similarly not to be underestimated. It was completely no weaker than a level 6 god tool. The old man still wanted to make a final struggle, but his heart was pierced by thousands of sword chi, and his body was forcibly split into 2. However, deities would not die so easily. Once their divine souls left their bodies, they had to fly away. Theoretically speaking, without a physical body, the divine soul was like rootless duckweed. It would quickly weaken and finally die. However, the stronger one was, the slower the speed of weakening would be. Those at the high extreme of the sun-moon tier could at least last for a few months, which was enough time for him to find a fresh corpse, or simply replace a living person and possess them. Humph! However, Ling Han flicked his finger lightly, and a flash of sword chi caught up. The old man's divine soul was instantly shattered, and he completely died. The elder's divine sword immediately wailed in anguish. It was just about to fly into the sky and flee, yet it was slashed several hundred times by the divine demon sword. The martial intent within it was forcefully destroyed, and it turned into an ordinary sword. Without the martial art intent, a god tool was no longer a god tool but only a sharp weapon. Ling Han put this sword away. In the future, he could let the divine demon sword devour it, so he naturally would not waste it. I never thought that I would encounter the 5 sects under such circumstances. However, they lost this treasure map and actually specially sent people to search for it, so it's not ordinary. Ling Han took out the treasure map again. However, his understanding of the Cloud Apex planet was extremely pitiful, and he could not study the location of that place no matter what. That's true. Even the 5 sects have not figured it out. Otherwise, why would they run around with the treasure map? They must have already gone to retrieve the treasure. Let's see. If we happen to encounter it, we can take it. Otherwise, there's no need to waste time. Ling Han returned to his original place, and continued to wait for the Purple Moon Army to move out. At the same time, he released that egg, letting it continue to bask in the sun to see if it could speed up its growth. A few days later, Rabbit and the old ginseng returned, both looking disheveled. It turned out that they had encountered elites from the netherworld. If it were not for the fact that they could both escape underground, they would definitely have been made into rabbit meat and old ginseng soup. Little Han, hurry up and leave with Uncle Rabbit. Let's settle this grudge. Rabbit pulled Ling Han. Right. Grandpa Ginseng has never suffered such a loss in his entire life. I can't just let it go like this. That one-eyed dragon sword almost sliced off Grandpa Ginseng's manhood. I need a 20-year-old doo-doo to calm my nerves. The old ginseng took out a pink doo-doo and took a deep breath. Instantly he felt refreshed. Ling Han sent him flying with a kick. How could there be such a wretched spirit of the 5 elements? In comparison, the rock golem was practically a model of morality. I don't have time, Ling Han refused. Since you guys are so free, hurry up and help me find out when the Purple Moon Army will move out. Brat, as expected of Grandpa Ginseng's good friend, the old ginseng ran back, looking like a kindred spirit. However, you're much more greedy than Grandpa Ginseng. You actually want to capture their entire army in one fell swoop. Even Grandpa Ginseng can't help but admire you. Ling Han chuckled and gave him another kick. Ah! There was a pained cry, and the old ginseng was kicked into the sky. Brat, are you done? The voice became more and more distant, and the old ginseng turned into a small star. The world finally became peaceful. Huh! Ling Han suddenly stood up. He saw that 100 kilometers away, a group of people was currently emerging from the main camp of the Purple Moon Army. With his eyesight, he could still clearly see them from 100 kilometers away. They were so far away because there was an Eternal River Tier elite standing guard in the Purple Moon Army. Their perception would definitely be incredibly powerful. He didn't dare to get too close. Otherwise, if an Eternal River Tier elite thought that he was deliberately spying on them, he would really be killed. Although everyone was united against outsiders, who dared to say anything when an Eternal River Tier elite moved out? It had been proven time and time again that strength was king in this world. However, the Purple Moon Army finally moved out, although it was only a small army. Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth. Like this, he could clearly see everyone. There were only 100 people in this army, and Ling Han had seen them from the beginning to the end. When his eyes swept over 1/3 of the army, his eyes suddenly fixed on one person, and an excited expression appeared on his face. Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Chapter 1249. After 10,000 years he finally saw Iran again. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was a prodigy. In a mere 10,000 years she had advanced to the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier. The greatest benefit of this was that her appearance hadn't aged at all. She was still as beautiful as she had been in the past. She had been the #1 beauty of the lower realm in the past. Even in the immortal realm, she could still be considered a stunning beauty. Otherwise, how could the heir of the Xie clan have fallen in love with her at first sight? However, a beauty like her was no longer unique. If that weren't the case, Xie Donglai wouldn't have had to make a move. More powerful figures would have taken her as their mistress. For men, wasn't cultivating to become stronger for the sake of power and beauty? After being stared at for too long, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden actually sensed something, and walked in Ling Han's direction. Beside the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was an ordinary-looking woman. She discovered that the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's behavior was a little strange, and couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong?" The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden smiled faintly, shook her head and said, "It's nothing." Her heart shuddered. Had the Xie clan found her so quickly? Ling Han watched as this small group left the camp, and then hurriedly followed. "Brat, don't forget Grandpa Ginseng when you're wooing girls." The old ginseng caught up. He loved beauties the most. Rabbit scoffed and said, "Useless." However, he also chased after them because the direction that Ling Han had taken was the depths of the passageway between the two realms. He was still hoping that Ling Han would take revenge for him. The three followed this small group. The regulations of heaven and earth here were too strange, and it was very difficult for them to travel. After a day, they actually only walked a little over 500 kilometers. This was unimaginable in the outside world. At night, this group stopped to set up camp. They wanted to rest for the night and maintain their peak condition. Meanwhile, Ling Han and the others stopped even further away, and also rested for the night. The old ginseng wasn't willing to stay put, and wanted to attack the women's camp at night. In the end, he was beaten up by Ling Han. What a joke. This time it was clear that his wife was inside, so how could he tolerate the old ginseng peeping? "Brat, you're too disloyal. Can you even pick up so many girls? You're eating the meat, but you're not even leaving some soup for Grandpa Ginseng." The old ginseng was flustered and exasperated. "If you keep talking nonsense, I'll cook you," Ling Han threatened. Okay. Rabbit began to drool. Uncle Rabbit has already prepared firewood. He threw out a large pile of charcoal, and it was not an ordinary one, but made of red sandalwood. It was a good fire source for alchemy and artifact forging. It was such a luxury to use it to cook and eat. The old ginseng was dumbfounded. He pointed at the rabbit and said, "What a good brother, Rabbit. You were still calling Grandpa Ginseng brother during the day. So it turns out that you've been thinking about Grandpa Ginseng's meat all along. Radish, if you don't enter hell, who will? Contribute your flesh and blood to benefit the masses. Uncle Rabbit will always remember you." Rabbit said, pretending to be serious. At the same time it held its chin and said, Little Han, do you think we should wash this old ginseng king? Wash your sister. The old ginseng hurriedly hid far away. He was really afraid that these two fellows would get into a frenzy and chop him into pieces. Ling Han was not in the mood to pay attention to these two buffoons. Instead, he was thinking about how to strike up a conversation with the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. The next day, the army broke camp and set out, traveling another 500 or so kilometers. Just like that, after 4 days they could be considered to have entered deep into the two-realm battlefield. The environment had become increasingly harsh. Not only was the spiritual qi barren, but the conflict of regulations had also become more and more obvious. In some places the regulations of the immortal realm were stronger, while in other places the regulations of the netherworld were stronger. The result of this was that one netherworld and one immortal should clearly have the same level of strength, but if they fought in this place, it would be the elites of the netherworld who were more powerful, and if it was another place, it would be the elites of the immortal realm who were more powerful. Thus, if they fought in this place, it was also very important to choose a suitable location. Otherwise, it was possible that they would win but lose, and it was possible that they would be able to turn the tables. And on this day, the Purple Moon Army at the front finally encountered an army from the netherworld. The other party was also a small army, and when they encountered each other, they only experienced a short standoff before immediately starting a great battle. This was the kind of opportunity. Ling Han immediately charged out, and charged toward that netherworld army. When encountering beings from the netherworld, everyone had the responsibility to attack, and after forming a friendship through battle, it would become easier to find the heavenly phoenix divine maiden to speak alone. The beings of the netherworld were clearly different from those of the immortal realm. They were always shrouded in an evil and sinister aura, and it could be seen with a single glance. If the immortal realm was yang, then the netherworld was yin. If the immortal realm was fire, then the netherworld was water, just like the two sides of a piece of paper. The difference was practically carved into their bones, and it could not be erased no matter what. This netherworld army was clearly all in human form, but some had horns and some had tails. Because of the evil aura shrouding them, they were completely different from the human forms that demonic beasts of the immortal realm had taken. Most of them used spears, and there were occasionally some who used swords and sabers. Their battle prowess ranged from the mountain river tier to the sun moon tier. The Purple Moon Army also had this kind of strength. Thus, once they started fighting, it became a fierce battle. When Ling Han arrived, he didn't say anything and directly attacked. He didn't use the divine demon sword either. He simply waved his hands and punched out violently. Although he didn't use his most powerful technique, he had already cultivated a sliver of the might of heavenly tribulation, so each of his punches naturally contained supreme might. If his punches were weaker than his, they would really be wounded if they were grazed, and they would die if they were touched. He turned into a killing machine and he could basically kill one with each punch. He stored the corpses into the Black Tower. These corpses could be used to exchange for merit points, so there was naturally no reason for him not to use them. After killing a dozen or so netherworld beings, he finally attracted the attention of an elite. A netherworld elite dressed in full armor targeted him, and he waved a spear to attack him. Humph! With a phoenix cry, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden also rushed over. 2 phoenix wings that were 50 kilometers long spread out behind her, and they were burning with divine flames. With a single flap they could burn 500 kilometers. The phoenix wings shot out tens of thousands of blazing feathers, which shot toward the netherworld elite. "I'll stay here, go somewhere else," the heavenly phoenix divine maiden said. "TSK, does this count as having telepathy? She knows to protect her husband just like that?" Ling Han laughed heartily and didn't try to show off. Instead, he leaped into the air and charged toward the other netherworld beings. Good steel should be used on the edge of the blade. His efficiency in slaughtering low-level Sun-Moon tier elites was far too high. With his help, the low-level Sun-Moon tier elites of the netherworld army were quickly slaughtered, and only 7 consummate-level elites were left. They didn't continue fighting and quickly retreated. The Purple Moon Army chased for a while, but consummate-level Sun-Moon tier elites weren't easy to kill. In the end, they only managed to severely wound one person, and didn't manage to kill another. Little brother, thank you. The army of women counted their losses, and then expressed their gratitude to Ling Han. Fighting against the netherworld is everyone's responsibility, Ling Han said. Then, he turned to the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, and said, Miss, thank you for your help. Chapter 1250. Have we met before? The heavenly phoenix divine maiden asked in surprise. His appearance was very unfamiliar, but his eyes gave her a very familiar feeling, causing a ripple in her heart that was already as calm as an ancient well. As expected of his wife, she had feelings for him. Ling Han smiled and said, That shouldn't be possible. Oh, that's right, handsome, what's your name? There were many girls in the army of women, and they were all very bold, casting flirtatious glances at Ling Han. Ling Han glanced at the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, and said, Ling Han. Ah! The heavenly phoenix divine maiden couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice, Big sister heavenly phoenix, what's wrong? A few women approached the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Nothing. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden shook her head. These were probably just two people with the same name. Her Ling Han should have died in the lower realm long ago. Everyone, I have many pills here that can cure all diseases. Ling Han took out some pills, deciding to win over the hearts of the people. It was clear that the heavenly phoenix divine maiden was going to stay in the Purple Moon Army for a period of time. Moreover, the Purple Moon Army discriminated against men. Thus, Ling Han wanted to build a good relationship with these female soldiers, and asked them to take care of him. The women were all overjoyed. The most precious thing in the world of martial art was alchemical pills. In terms of price, they couldn't compare to god tools, but because they were consumables, they were definitely the most expensive in the immortal realm. Ling Han was actually giving away so many pills. This was practically extravagant to the point of squandering. It's fine, I'm just an alchemist. Pills are a piece of cake, Ling Han said with a smile. Hearing this, everyone was even more shocked. Alchemists had a very high status. Alchemists were also divided into 20 minor levels corresponding to martial art, and if alchemy and martial art were equal, then alchemists would definitely be more awesome. This was decided by demand. Many women's eyes lit up. The world of martial art was cruel. Although cultivators were glamorous, who knew if there would be a tomorrow? Who knew when they would die? Meanwhile, alchemists were stable. As long as they didn't actively interfere in the grievances of cultivators, their status was high, and they would only be begged by others. Thus, if she wanted to marry someone, an alchemist was definitely the best candidate. Grandmaster Ling, what level alchemist are you? These maidens all asked. It's barely at the 8th rank, Ling Han said with a smile. In order to get closer to his wife, he was going all out. When he said this, it wasn't just the young maidens who were infatuated with him. Even many old maidens at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier were tempted, and their eyes were filled with excitement as they looked at Ling Han. It was as if they could eat him alive. This is definitely a rich husband. However, Ling Han was the only one who had said that he was a level 8 alchemist. Whether it was true or not was naturally not something that could be determined by a single sentence from the other party. Ling Han merely wanted them to attach importance to him, so he took the opportunity to request to travel with the Purple Moon Army. That way they would be able to take care of each other. After all, he was an alchemist and his battle prowess was very weak. The Purple Moon Army's campsite didn't allow men to enter, but that didn't mean that all the women in the army hated men. In fact, most of them were normal, and a small portion of them were even licentious. Trying to make a living here, one could lose their life at any time, and the affairs between men and women could relieve the pressure to a large extent. Thus, if it weren't for the Purple Moon Divine Maiden's military rule, it was likely that the Purple Moon Army would have long since become a brothel. Ling Han was an alchemist, so he naturally caused many young maidens to be attracted to him. This made Ling Han feel that he had gone overboard. However, for the sake of the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, he still opened his cauldron and concocted some alchemical pills. For example, divine pills below level 5 could be concocted within a day, and the majority of this army was at the Mountain River tier. Once these alchemical pills were distributed, Ling Han's status in the army naturally skyrocketed. Though there were still some who didn't believe that he was a level 8 alchemist at such a young age, there was no doubt that he was at least a level 4 alchemist. But even a level 4 alchemist was awesome enough because Ling Han was too young. He had already become a level 4 alchemist at such a young age, so how difficult would it be for him to become a level 5, level 6, or even level 8 alchemist in the future? Thus, after a few days of interaction, at least 90% of the maidens were attracted to Ling Han. When they had nothing to do, they liked to run to his tent and make eyes at him. "Little sister Heavenly Phoenix, help me deliver this letter to Grandmaster Ling." In a small forest, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was pulled away by a middle-aged woman. The latter handed her a letter. She couldn't help but be surprised. This woman was called Zhu Liyun, and she was a good friend she had made in the Purple Moon Army. Her cultivation level was the same as her, but she was much older. She was already over 1,800,000 years old. Thus, even with the lifespan of a cultivator at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier, she was already middle-aged. "Big Sister Yun, don't tell me that you've also fallen in love with that person," the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden asked with a smile. A shy smile spread across Zhu Liyun's face, and she said, "Even you are making fun of me." The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden couldn't help but laugh at this middle-aged woman's bashfulness, and she asked, "Why didn't you deliver the letter yourself?" "I'm shy," Zhu Liyun said bashfully. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden shook her head and said, "That person might not be a level 8 alchemist. Moreover," she didn't want to say it directly, but Ling Han was too young. Why would he accept a middle-aged woman? With so many young and beautiful girls throwing themselves at him, there was absolutely no need for him to choose Zhu Liyun. Her appearance was far too ordinary. "Are you worried that I'm not beautiful enough?" Zhu Liyun smiled confidently and said, "Looks can't be eaten. Moreover, I'm at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier, and there's a very high chance that I'll break through to the Heavenly Body tier in the future. If he's smart, he'll know that marrying me is the most beneficial thing for him." The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden couldn't help but shake her head in her mind. This close friend of hers wasn't truly in love with Ling Han. Rather, she was in love with his identity as an alchemist. She said, "Fine, I'll deliver the letter on behalf of Big Sister Yun. Remember to put in some good words for me." Zhu Liyun hurriedly pulled on the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden and said, "You're so beautiful, so all men will listen to you." These words caused the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden to frown slightly, and a hint of displeasure appeared on her face. "I'll look at what Big Sister is saying. You've made Big Sister unhappy," Zhu Liyun hurriedly said. "Big Sister didn't mean it, so please don't take it to heart." Only then did the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden nod and say, "I'll deliver the letter to Big Sister." She directly arrived in front of Ling Han's tent and asked, "Is Grandmaster Ling in?" "Yes." Ling Han immediately came out of his tent when he heard this voice. Although he had charmed a large group of women, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden wasn't one of them. Moreover, she had deliberately kept her distance from him, so he hadn't found a chance to be alone with her. Now the chance had finally come. Seeing Ling Han's burning gaze on her, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden couldn't help but show a hint of displeasure. However, when she recalled that she had been entrusted to do this, she still handed over the letter in her hand and said, "A good sister of mine asked me to deliver this to you. She's a shy person, so she was too embarrassed to give it to you in person." "Love letter?" Ling Han could guess with a single glance, and his expression involuntarily became strange. "Wife, oh wife, you're actually delivering a love letter for another woman? What are you doing?" Chapter 1252. Ooh. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden stayed for a long time before leaving. She knew a great many of Ling Han's secrets, but she still did not know about the existence of the Black Tower. Because there were too many people here, it was too complicated. Ling Han would only bring her into the Black Tower when the two of them were absolutely alone. Moreover, once they entered the army, they couldn't easily leave. They had to accumulate enough merit points. Thus, their current focus was on fighting netherworld beings. Moreover, the army emphasized teamwork. Thus, it was useless even if Ling Han gave her the corpses of netherworld beings in the Black Tower. They had to be divided equally among everyone. This was also why the army was safe, but the accumulation of merit points was slow. They didn't emphasize individual heroism, and instead placed teamwork first. Thus, Ling Han had to wait until the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden retired before he could win her heart. When the Heaven Phoenix Divine Maiden returned, Julian immediately asked nervously, "Sister, what did he say?" There was a hint of a young and inexperienced girl in her voice. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden couldn't help but feel guilty. She could say that Ling Han was actually the man she was destined to be with, and they only met again after 10,000 years. At first, she was delivering a love letter on behalf of a close friend, but in the end, she had hooked up with him. "This?" she muttered. Zhu Liyun's expression changed and she said, "Did you give the letter to Grandmaster Ling or not?" "Big Sister Yun, he's not suitable for you. Forget him," the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden advised. Zhu Liyun didn't speak. She stared at her for a while, and then said, "Don't tell me you've fallen in love with him?" That was not wrong, but she was a whole 10,000 years too early. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden couldn't explain, and could only look on speechlessly. Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Zhu Liyun was furious. She pointed at the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, and said, "You bitch, I treat you like a sister, and this is how you repay me. You even steal your own sister's man. Why don't you go die?" The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden also looked angry, and said, "Setting aside whether I interfered or not, do you think Ling Han will definitely fall in love with you?" "Why not?" Zhu Liyun said loudly. "I'm at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier, and he's only a mere level 4 or 5 alchemist. To be honest, he's actually trying to climb up my social ladder, and I didn't even look down on him. What does he have to be unhappy about?" "Auntie, you're such a narcissist." Now, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden naturally knew that Ling Han couldn't possibly be lying. He was a genuine level 8 alchemist, so cultivators at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier were really nothing in front of him. At the very least, they would have to bow down to him. First of all, you don't have good looks. Second, you're old. Third, your status is lower. What right do you have to say that Ling Han is a social climber? She originally felt that she had let Zhu Liyun down, but when she heard what Zhu Liyun had said, she felt annoyed and swept away that bit of guilt. She did not owe him anything in the first place. "Bitch, let's make a clean break from now on." Zhu Liyun swung her arm and left. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden shook her head. This was the only friend she had made after entering the army camp. Unfortunately, she couldn't withstand the slightest test. Speaking of which, Zhu Liyun naturally wouldn't give up. She immediately went to look for Ling Han. Since the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden couldn't convey her thoughts on her behalf, she naturally could only thicken her skin and do it herself. In truth, it wasn't that she was thin-skinned previously, but rather that she wanted to give Ling Han the impression that she was reserved. However, how could Ling Han possibly be interested in her? Even a seductive beauty like Lin Yuqi couldn't move him, let alone this kind of old woman with no good looks at all. More importantly, they didn't know each other at all, okay? After being politely but firmly rejected by Ling Han, Zhu Liyun returned to her own tent with a livid expression. Her expression was icy, and she said resentfully, "Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, I had thought that you were pretty and might have some powerful connections, so I wanted to befriend you. I didn't think that you would steal the man of my dreams. Humph, since the Xie clan is looking for you, I'll lend them a hand." Also, that damn man made it sound so nice, saying that he already has a woman he loves, and we're not suitable. Pay, isn't it because that bitch is better than me? You dare to humiliate me like this? Humph, when the people of the Xie clan come, they'll kill you as well. You're only a level 4 or level 5 alchemist, yet you dare to be so arrogant? Humph. She released a bird that was only the size of a bee. This was a hummingbird, and although it didn't have any offensive abilities, its advantage lay in its speed. In fact, it could even rival heavenly body tier elites. This was also something that she had caught by chance, and she had trained it. Now, it had become her communication tool. She was a veteran Sun Moon tier elite, and her merit points were so high that she could have long since retired dozens of times. However, she had always stayed in the Purple Moon Army because it was safer to travel with the army. Moreover, her merit points could be used to purchase alchemical pills, god tools, and so on. When she had first entered the two-realm battlefield, She had only been at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. Now, however, she was at the consummate level. This was because she had exchanged for a large number of alchemical pills. Of course, this was also because she had extraordinary talent in martial art. Otherwise, alchemical pills alone wouldn't have been enough. After so many years, she had naturally built up a considerable network of connections in the Purple Moon Army. Now that she was using the hummingbird to transmit information, it wouldn't be long before the news reached the ears of the Xie clan. At most, in 2 months, the people of the Xie clan would appear here. We're waiting for a good show. With Ling Han buying the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's support, her reputation in the Purple Moon Army instantly skyrocketed. Everyone knew that the reason why Ling Han was so generous was because he wanted to woo the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. He wanted to buy them over to be his lobbyists. In the next few days, the Purple Moon Army encountered a few more netherworld beings, and they won all of their battles. Ling Han contributed a large number of explosive thunder pills to the Purple Moon Army. Not to mention the increase of 1 star of battle prowess, the increase of 1 star of battle prowess of the entire army was extremely terrifying. However, their consecutive victories also provoked the netherworld, and they sent out an even more powerful army to search for them. This was an army composed entirely of elites at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, and there were as many as 50 of them. This was an unstoppable force, and the Purple Moon Army didn't dare to oppose it at all. They immediately chose to retreat. The purpose of their expedition was firstly to kill some netherworld beings, and secondly to search for realm spirit stones. By now they had killed many enemies, yet they hadn't found a single realm spirit stone. This disappointed everyone. Since they had already attracted the attention of the powerhouses, the female soldiers decided to return to the barracks directly and come out after a period of time. In any case, Ling Han couldn't join the Purple Moon Army. Thus, he didn't plan to return with the army of women. He was all alone, and he also had the Black Tower to hide in. Thus, the dangerous 2-realm battlefield was nothing to him. He wanted to kill even more netherworld beings and accumulate merit points. This would allow him to exchange for godly metal. In addition, if he could pick up some realm spirit stones, then he would be rich. He could exchange them for a vast amount of godly metal. Raising the quality of the divine demon sword had already become an extremely important task for Ling Han, second only to raising his own power. He decided to venture deeper into the 2-realm battlefield and kill even more netherworld beings. Chapter 1253. The old ginseng and rabbit supported Ling Han's decision to enter the depths of the 2-realm battlefield. They were still hoping that Ling Han would beat up the netherworld elites and stand up for them. In this battlefield, there were usually Mountain River tier and Sun Moon tier cultivators. Heavenly Body tier cultivators basically wouldn't appear. Once they did, it meant that the scale of the battle was about to increase. Though the 2 realms had clashed, there hadn't been any major battles in recent years. They were carefully controlled within a controllable range. On the other hand, whether it was the elites of the immortal realm or the netherworld, it was relatively dangerous to venture deep into the other's territory because the regulations of heaven and earth were different, which would cause the battle prowess of the elites to drop greatly. They could only use power and couldn't use regulations. In fact, their power might even be suppressed, and the higher their cultivation level, the greater the suppression. Just like Ling Han now. His power was very strong, but because of the restrictions of his cultivation level, he couldn't comprehend 2 high-level regulations. His power clearly surpassed 6 stars, but his battle prowess could only surpass 6 stars. Because as long as the opponent's power was similar to his, but they had grasped higher regulations of heaven and earth, they could make up for their lack of martial arts techniques, and could even use martial arts techniques to suppress him. After all, power was only a part of battle prowess. If an elite of the high extreme of the heavenly body tier from the immortal realm went to the netherworld, perhaps their battle prowess would drop to the medium extreme or even the low extreme. That was really too dangerous. Precisely because of this, the elites of the 2 realms didn't dare to act recklessly. Usually they would guard one end of the passageway and kill every elite that came. It was easy and enjoyable. But for Ling Han, his forte was power, and his cultivation level was still low, so the suppression of the regulations of the netherworld wasn't obvious. Thus, even if he entered the netherworld, he would be very little affected. Moreover, he had refined the essence of a demon master. Though it was only a small portion, demon masters represented the strongest power of the netherworld. As long as he channeled demonic chi, he naturally wouldn't be suppressed by the heaven and earth of the netherworld. This was a huge advantage. Ling Han walked in the two-realm battlefield. He was adapting to the continuously changing regulations here, trying his best to integrate himself into the regulations of the two realms. He was equivalent to cultivating the regulations of both realms, though the level was still relatively low. However, because his cultivation level was also relatively low, it was just right. Another 10 days later, Ling Han had completely adapted to this place. He was like a fish in water. Here, regardless of whether they were from the netherworld or the immortal realm, they would all be suppressed to a certain extent. However, Ling Han was not affected at all, and he could still fight at full strength. However, they hadn't been able to find a single realm spirit stone even after a dozen or so days. This made the old ginseng and rabbit extremely displeased. Too stingy, the old ginseng grumbled. He took out a doo-doo and wiped his forehead as if he was tired. If I had known that all this would have been for nothing, I would have gone back to change clothes for those girls. Even that underworld brat hasn't arrived yet. The rabbit said angrily, its two red eyes radiating a cold light. Ling Han sat down and planned to eat something. Even in a place like this, he still couldn't change his foodie habits. He started a fire, took out the demonic beast meat, and placed it into the pot. Then, he added in the nourishing divine medicine. Very soon, a fragrant aroma wafted out. He was a little rueful. He couldn't hunt demonic beasts here. One bite meant one bite less. What should he do in the future? Add another egg. I've heard that eggs are very nourishing. The rabbit held an egg with its claws, and was about to throw it into the pot. Grandpa Ginseng likes it. The old ginseng hurriedly waved his arms. Before Grandpa Ginseng achieved his Tao, I was almost harmed by the eagle and rabbit. Now I want revenge. He howled. Do you believe that Grandpa Rabbit will eat you? The rabbit said fiercely. This old ginseng was actually mocking him again. Pung! Ling Han punched out. This rabbit was actually using an egg that he had sunned to cook in the pot. Ah! The rabbit screamed, causing the old ginseng to laugh proudly. Very soon the nourishing meat soup was cooked. The three of them hurriedly began to eat. The old ginseng had also been led astray. He hadn't tasted good before, but now he had become a foodie, and his appetite was very big. Brat, what kind of egg is this? It seems to be very impressive. The rabbit kicked the egg, unwilling to give up its evil desire to eat it. Bird egg, Ling Han replied, and then put the egg behind him to prevent it from being kicked by the rabbit. If so, he could only cook it in the pot. Good bird or bad bird? The old ginseng deliberately provoked. He knew that the rabbit hated birds the most, and had often hunted him before he had achieved his Tao. The rabbit's expression became ugly. Ling Han was just about to speak, but his heart trembled. He said, "There's an enemy." The rabbit and the old ginseng hurriedly dug into the ground, and unceremoniously threw the pot to Ling Han. If there was a problem, of course there would be someone higher up to handle it. It was unrealistic to want these two to risk their lives. Fuck, Ling Han said in his mind. His eyes, however, were fixed on a nearby hill. There a tall and slender figure had appeared. His hands were clasped behind his back, and his robes fluttered lightly in the breeze. A creature of the netherworld. With a single glance, one could tell that his aura was completely different. That kind of eeriness, that kind of evil was practically as obvious as the sun. But what surprised Ling Han was that apart from this aura, this person was completely no different from a human. He only looked to be in his 20s, and was extremely handsome. Moreover, he was a super handsome man. It's him. Rabbit and the old ginseng raised their hands at the same time to point at that person. Little Han, it's this bastard. Was this the creature of the netherworld that had chased after Rabbit and the old ginseng, wanting to turn them into rabbit ginseng soup? Chop him up. Grandpa Ginseng is going to break his meat diet today and eat netherworld human barbecued pork buns. Rabbit and the old ginseng both shouted. However, they both retreated even further, and didn't have the slightest intention of charging forward to fight to the death. The young man from the netherworld leaped and landed 30 meters in front of Ling Han. A powerful aura radiated from him. He was clearly also at the Sun-Moon tier, yet he gave Ling Han a completely different feeling. The immortal realm possessed the power of creation, while the netherworld possessed the power of destruction. These were two opposing regulations of heaven and earth. "Get out of my way," the youth rebuked in a low voice. "You don't have the right to die at my hands. How arrogant." Ling Han laughed and said, "Perhaps you do have the right to die at my hands." The youth's eyes twitched. Boom! 2 balls of netherworld fire flashed in his eyes, filled with a frightening might. It was as if they could melt godly metal no matter how high level it was. Ling Han's fighting spirit soared. This was a king tier of the netherworld. Pretty good opponent. "I am the prince of the Black Dragon tribe Aozian. Who are you?" the youth asked calmly, and the image of a black true dragon actually soared behind him. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws, exuding a powerful pressure. Strange, Ling Han thought. The netherworld also had the dragon tribe, and their surname was Ao? Why did it seem like they were from the same family as the dragon tribe of the immortal realm? But the two realms were opposing each other, so how could they possibly be allied by marriage? Ling Han smiled calmly and said, "I am Ling Han. If you can block 3 moves from me and not die, I will spare your life," Ao Ziun said coldly. Cell phones read more easily. Chapter 1254. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. In this world, there was no one in the same realm as him who could kill him in 3 moves. This Ao Ziun was only in the low extreme, and his aura was slightly stronger than Ling Han, so he was either in the late stage or the peak stage. "You're very confident. It's only interesting to step on someone like that," Ling Han said. Ao Ziun coldly said, "Humph, even if I don't kill you in 3 moves, I'll still teach you a lesson." He had been angered by Ling Han, who had actually said that he would trample on him. Did he know what his identity as a dark dragon prince represented? He moved, and as he struck out with his palm, a massive black dragon claw instantly descended from the sky, pressing down on Ling Han. Wang, 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 multiple divine patterns appeared, interweaving to form a terrifying black flame. The black dragon was proficient in controlling fire. This was a supreme divine flame that could burn anything. Ling Han was slightly surprised. Was this the descendant of a true dragon? Strong, very strong indeed. He had a feeling that if he let the other party burn him like this, even a physique like his would be burned alive. Of course, this was definitely not something that could be done in a short period of time. It would take at least 10 days to half a month. But it was still achievable. For example, if a few more people of equal strength were to come and trap him, then this black flame would have a miraculous effect. As expected, one should not look down on others. Ling Han flicked his fingers and used the lightning sword technique. Xiao xiao xiao. Instantly, sword chi swept toward the dragon claw. Puff 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 puff. The sword chi swept across, and cracks quickly appeared on the dragon claw. Then it shattered and was finally shredded into pieces. Ao Ziun could not help but be slightly surprised, and said, "I didn't expect you to be so capable. Ha ha. If I didn't have some ability, I wouldn't have dared to mingle around here," Ling Han said coolly. Realization dawned on Ao Ziun, and he said, "You're also here to participate in the 2-realm prodigy gathering, right?" "What 2-world prodigies meeting?" Ling Han muttered in his heart, but his expression did not change as he said, "You too? Nonsense. If I'm not qualified, then who else is?" Ao Ziun said proudly. "I forgot to tell you I hate arrogant people like you," Ling Han said. "So what?" Ao Ziun laughed coldly. "Let me test the waters first to see if you have the right to participate." He attacked again, this time towards Ling Han. He still pressed his palm down, and it turned into a dragon claw. However, this time the entire dragon claw was wrapped in black flames, as if it was a monster born from heaven and earth that wanted to destroy this world. Ling Han took a deep breath and blew it out fiercely. Whoosh, violent winds whistled and blew past the dragon claw. Instantly, the blazing flames were forcefully extinguished, and only a bare dragon claw was still pressing down. However, its might had decreased sharply, and it could no longer pose a threat to Ling Han. The corners of Ao Ziyun's mouth twitched involuntarily. You're doing this on purpose, aren't you? And you say that I'm arrogant? You blew out my divine flame with a breath of air. Isn't that even more arrogant? However, this brat really couldn't be underestimated. The black flames were a natural talent of his race, and added with the regulations of heaven and earth that he had fused with, it shouldn't be something that a cultivator at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier could block. It should be known that he had killed a great many cultivators of the immortal realm in the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier with the black flames on this battlefield. None of them could stand up to the might of the black flames, and he had never thought that it would be blocked by someone who was similarly in the low extreme. Encountering an opponent at the same cultivation level. What did this mean? The other party was also a king tier. A determination to win rose up in Ao Ziyun. His cultivation level was actually higher than Ling Han's, being at the peak stage of the low extreme. If he couldn't quickly suppress this opponent, then wouldn't that mean that he was inferior to the latter? Humph, in the immortal realm, could there be a prodigy that could stand shoulder to shoulder with this prince? He said with a cold smirk. He leaped up and charged out. This time he was serious. A black dragon soared furiously behind him, raising his aura endlessly. Hong, he brought along a burning black cloud as he charged over. Wherever it passed, the ground would be burnt until it cracked, and the protruding rocks would turn into nothingness. Ling Han was unafraid. He used the star-plucking step and faced his opponent head-on. His fist shot out with supreme dominance. I don't care if you're a dragon or a worm, in front of me, you can only be suppressed to the ground. Pung 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 pung. The two of them exchanged blows, their fists colliding endlessly. Every time they collided, the heaven and earth would lose color. They were obviously only in the low extreme of the mountain river tier. Furthermore, this might practically made one suspect that two great elites of the heavenly body tier were fighting to the death. Little Han put in more effort, and shatter every bone of this brat. Today we'll eat roasted dragon bones. Grandpa Ginseng is already unable to endure the hunger and thirst, and wants to drink the fresh blood of the netherworld. Rabbit and the old Ginseng cheered Ling Han on from one side. However, these two guys were both good-for-nothings, and their words were extremely hurtful. Ao Ziyun was both shocked and furious. As an elite, he naturally could listen in all directions in battle. The words of the old Ginseng and Rabbit naturally could not escape his ears. They actually said that they wanted to eat his dragon bones. These guys were really detestable. But Ling Han's strength also shocked him. In the two-realm battlefield, because of the collision between the two worlds, the regulations were very chaotic, and would cause a cultivator's battle prowess to drop greatly. But this kind of weakening was two-sided. If I fell, you would also fall. Furthermore, in this place, the regulations of the netherworld were slightly stronger. Theoretically speaking, his weakening should be slightly better than Ling Han's. But the two of them actually only fought to a draw. He was clearly 2 subminor levels higher than the other, and this was a suppression of 2 stars of power. Furthermore, in terms of terrain, he even had the advantage, and this was only a draw. Then, if they were placed in a place where the two realms were balanced, wouldn't he lose? Yet he did not know that Ling Han possessed demonic origin, and could adapt to the regulations of the two realms. He was not weakened at all, and the one who was at a disadvantage was actually him. But because he did not know, he couldn't help but feel a strong sense of wariness towards Ling Han. How could this being of the immortal realm be so freakish? He could actually go against the power of 2 stars and fight to a draw with him. It should be known that he, too, was a super genius that had cultivated to the true pinnacle of the mountain river tier. A bit strong but still not enough. Ao Ziyun naturally would not give up easily. With a battle cry, he was no longer just competing in power with Ling Han. Instead, he unleashed a secret technique, and madly increased his battle prowess. Ling Han countered every move that came his way. Using his finger as a sword, he used the lightning sword technique. Sword Chi danced fast and ruthless. You were strong and so was I. Both sides were still evenly matched. To say nothing of Ao Ziyun's shock, even Ling Han was secretly rueful. There were indeed countless prodigies in this world. It should be known that this was only a passageway between the two realms, and in the immortal realm, There were innumerable such passageways. He could encounter such a prodigy in any random two-realm battlefield. Then how many were there in the whole netherworld? However, in a battle of equals, he was invincible. Ling Han was filled with confidence because his strongest attributes were his spirit and physique, and he was far from fighting to that extent at present. The indestructible Heaven Scroll should be a supreme secret technique in the celestial realm. He had only slowly mastered it after being forcefully instilled by the Black Tower, and he definitely did not believe that there was a technique that could match it in the immortal realm. Dragon's might. Aoziun exclaimed softly. Wang, the image of the black dragon behind him, suddenly exuded a frightening might. Even those in the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier would feel a chill in their hearts, and as a result, their battle prowess would drop greatly. Chapter 1256. In the face of Ling Han's forcefulness, even Aoziun could only retreat. The two of them battled all the way while Aoziun retreated all the way. Who knew how many mountain rocks were shattered? And some mountain river tier cultivators along the way almost wet their pants in fright. Whether they were from the netherworld or the immortal realm, they all ran far away. If they were swept by the aftermath of the battle, even if they didn't die, they would be heavily injured. To say nothing of mountain river tier cultivators, even elites at the Sun-Moon tier were apprehensive. They only dared to watch from afar, not daring to get too close. Otherwise, even they would be killed. Those who could spectate the battle from a close distance had to be at least at the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. However, when they discovered that their opponents were only at the low extreme, even beings at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier broke out in a cold sweat. Prodigies like them might not even need tens of thousands of years to catch up to them. Damn it! Aoziun howled fiercely. To think that he was invincible among his peers in the netherworld, yet he had only lost to one person, and that person was indeed a genius. He wholeheartedly accepted his defeat, and it was not unjust. But to think that such a monster would appear in the god realm. I can't accept this. I can't accept this. The veins on his forehead bulged. Since the heavens had given birth to a heaven's chosen one like him, why would someone like Ling Han run out and cause trouble for him? Ling Han shook his head and said, "You think too highly of yourself. The world is so big, how many corners can you go to? There is no lack of geniuses in this world. Don't be too full of yourself." For example, he had only visited 2 galaxies, but he had already encountered many geniuses, such as He Tao and Wu Wentong. Which one of them was not a well-known figure in the world? If they were to battle on the same cultivation level, none of them would be weaker than Aoziun. He had not been to the netherworld before, but he believed that the vastness of the netherworld should not be inferior to that of the immortal realm. Even eternal river tiers could only travel a limited area, so who knew how many prodigies there were in this world? There was always a higher mountain, and there was only a fine line between confidence and arrogance. Ling Han, I admit that you are very strong, but compared to the geniuses of my realm, you are still very far off. Aoziun knew that it was impossible for him to defeat Ling Han. Even if he relied on divine talismans and medicinal pills to achieve victory, that was not due to his strength. A conceited genius like him would naturally disdain using such a method to win. He would only use this method to save his life. In a battle of the same level, a loss was a loss. Otherwise, it would only make him lose more face. But now that the 2 worlds were involved, he naturally wouldn't allow Ling Han to be arrogant. Oh, is that so? Ling Han smiled faintly. That's right. My realm has a prodigy called Qi Huangji. He has cultivated for no more than 200 years, and has now already advanced into the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier. Compared to him, you are like a firefly to the bright moon, not even worth mentioning at all. Aoziun did his best to belittle Ling Han. Ling Han could not help but snicker. If he was so weak, then what was Aoziun? However, advancing into the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier in just 200 years was extremely terrifying. It should be known that how many Sun-Moon tiers could break through to the heavenly body tier? The ratio was probably 1 in 10,000. However, those who cultivated the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier and then advanced into the heavenly body tier were at most 1 in 10,000 in the heavenly body tier. How difficult was it? And this Qi Huangji actually used a mere 200 years to reach the pinnacle level of the sun-moon tier. In other words, if he was willing, he could completely break through to the heavenly body tier in 200 years. With this comparison, it could be seen how frightening this person was. Though Ling Han had cultivated for no more than 30 years, after advancing into the immortal level, he had borrowed the power of the reincarnation tree many times, comprehending Tao under the tree. One day was equivalent to 1 year, and in truth, the time he had comprehended his cultivation level had far surpassed 200 years. Perhaps this Qi Huangji also has a treasure similar to the Black Tower that can accelerate the flow of time, he speculated. Because Small Tower had said that when the Black Tower recovered to its complete state, it could activate the acceleration of time. 1 day in the Black Tower could be 10 days, a month, or even a few years in the outside world. This was not only the acceleration of the spirit but also the whole person. Even the accumulation of cultivation level could be accelerated. Ling Han chuckled. Advancing quickly was not his trump card, but rather the indestructible body brought about by the indestructible heaven scroll. He naturally would not explain this to the other party, and only said, "All right, then I'll wait to meet this person." "You will." 3 years later, at the Two-Realm Prodigy Gathering, Qi Huangji will let you taste what despair is. Aozian withdrew his spear and left. He drew out a divine seal and stuck it on his body. Suddenly his speed skyrocketed. Even if Ling Han used the star-plucking step, he would at most be on par with him. Ling Han did not pursue. If he went any further, he would be in the territory of the netherworld. Who knew how many elites were standing guard there? His bit of strength was really a little insufficient. He stopped and withdrew the divine demon's sword. A powerful pressure rose up in his heart. If he wanted to topple the 5 sects, he had to have the cultivation level of the consummate level of the sun-moon tier no matter what. Merely battle prowess was still not enough. Because the 5 sects had existed for so many years, who knew how many trump cards they had? Thus, the cultivation level of the consummate level of the sun-moon tier was absolutely safe. In any case, he had already waited for so many years, and Ling Han did not mind being late for another 10 or 20 years. However, he definitely could not be rash and drag himself into trouble. Xiao. One after another, figures appeared. They were all in the consummate level of the sun-moon tier, and they all stared at Ling Han. These were all elites of the netherworld, and none of them concealed the killing intent in their eyes. This young man from the immortal realm was too freakish, and needed to be eliminated as soon as possible. Otherwise, if he was allowed to fully mature, that would be a colossal disaster for the netherworld. You guys think too much. There were naturally elites in the consummate level of the sun-moon tier on the side of the immortal realm. They had discovered the commotion earlier, and hurried over to join in the fun. Now that they saw that the people of the netherworld wanted to harm Ling Han, they all stepped out. Kill. The elites of the netherworld were very straightforward. The 2 realms had already been at war for how many years, and were already like fire and water, so what need was there for them to be polite? They immediately launched into a bloody battle. "Young man, you go first," an elite of the immortal realm called out to Ling Han. In truth, no one was willing to fight a battle that they had no confidence in winning. Thus, the elites of the immortal realm had only moved to protect Ling Han's life, and had not thought of exterminating these beings of the netherworld. If they fought this battle to the end, no matter who won in the end, they would have to pay a very heavy price. While it was true that they had come to the 2-realm battlefield to resist the invasion of the other realm, they had also come for merit points and realm spirit stones. Who was willing to really die in battle? Thus, as long as Ling Han ran, this battle naturally could not be fought. Ling Han nodded and used the star-plucking step. His figure flew, and he instantly disappeared into the distance. Previously, the elites of the immortal realm could not stop Aozian, and now the elites of the netherworld naturally could not stop Ling Han either. No, my present cultivation level is still too low. I have to think of a way to raise it as soon as possible. Otherwise, 3 years later, when I go to participate in that 2-realm prodigy gathering, I will definitely not be a match for Qi Huangji. Ling Han thought as he ran. Chapter 1257. Ling Han was confident but definitely not arrogant. After escaping from the encirclement, Ling Han stopped and waited for the old ginseng and rabbit to come over. When they arrived, Ling Han said, "Rabbit, do you want to go to a good place?" "What good place?" Rabbit asked. He had not entered the Black Tower yet. Ling Han laughed and first threw the old ginseng into the Black Tower. Then he grabbed Rabbit and entered with him. What is this place?" Rabbit was beyond shocked. A spatial god tool was something that he did not even dare to think about. "Here, go there and cultivate." Ling Han threw him under the reincarnation tree and did not bother to explain, so he let the old ginseng go with him. In a short while he heard Rabbit yelling. He was really stunned. If he comprehended under this divine tree, wouldn't he have a chance to reach the Genesis tier? Ling Han chuckled, summoned Small Tower and asked, "Is there a way to quickly dispel the alchemical poison in my body?" Small Tower floated slightly and said, "Yes." Ling Han was instantly overjoyed and said, "Quick, tell me what to do." If he could quickly dispel the alchemical poison in his body, he could reach the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier in a very short time, then advance to the pinnacle level, and then rush to the peak stage of the pinnacle level. The fourth level of the Black Tower has already been opened, and can provide divine fire every 3 months to temper your body. Under the divine fire, everything inside your body will be burned to ashes, Small Tower said calmly. Ling Han's lips twitched involuntarily. Why did this sound so terrifying? However, the Black Tower could provide divine fire and temper his physique. This was something that Small Tower had said long ago. However, Small Tower did not mention this again and he quickly forgot about it. He probed and asked, "Then will I be in danger?" "Yes." Small Tower nodded. "If you cannot endure, you will turn into ashes." "No, not even ashes will be left behind. You will completely turn into nothingness, and I will not have to endure an idiotic master like you anymore." "Fuck you, Tsundra Tower, will you die if you don't insult me?" Ling Han thought about it and said, "Why didn't you tell me before? Do you really want to die so badly?" Small Tower countered with a question first, and then said, "At first, I wanted to wait until you reached the heavenly body tier before allowing you to temper your divine body and raise your physique to another level." In truth, Small Tower had a sharp tongue but a soft heart. It had already arranged the path for Ling Han, and it should be said that it was the most beneficial direction for Ling Han's development. However, it always liked to mock Ling Han a little. Ling Han was pleasantly surprised and said, "You mean that my physique can be improved by another level, and reach a level that surpasses my realm by 2 small realms? Surpassing 2 minor levels is a bit exaggerated, but you will definitely be much more powerful than you are now. Moreover, after being tempered by the divine flames, the greatest effect is that you will have the possibility of being reborn from the ashes," Small Tower said. Ling Han immediately revealed a resolute expression and said, "There's no need to think about it. I want to be tempered by the divine flame." In the small world, his physique was a level higher than his cultivation level. He was simply a monster of the same cultivation level. It was basically impossible for anyone to injure him. Even those who were a level higher than him would find it difficult to do so. But in the immortal realm, his physique could only surpass 1 minor level, and that was not safe. In truth, as long as battle prowess surpassed 4 stars, then it was possible to injure him because 4 stars represented a minor level. Although 5-star geniuses were said to only exist in legends, in reality, such geniuses still existed. Moreover, Ling Han himself was such a genius, so the chances of him encountering such geniuses were quite high. Thus, his current physique was not truly invincible among those of the same cultivation level, but it was very, very awesome. Also, what is rebirth from the ashes? Ling Han asked. Cultivating the fire of indestructible life is like the immortal phoenix, reborn from the ashes of extreme death, Small Tower said. A portion of the indestructible heaven scroll borrows the secret art of the immortal phoenix to turn death into life. A supreme secret art. Immortal phoenix? Ling Han asked in surprise. Not a true phoenix? Compared to the immortal phoenix, what is a true phoenix? Small Tower said very disdainfully. Then the indestructible heaven scroll also referenced the secret art of some divine beast. No immortal beast? Ling Han asked curiously. The primal chaos origin beast, 1,000 transformations tortoise, and diamond ant are all top-notch existences in the celestial realm. They were fused into one by the heavenly venerable, and finally cultivated the indestructible heaven scroll. Small Tower said very proudly. Of course, the most important thing is that the heavenly venerable comprehended the ultimate regulations. This is the true essence of the indestructible heaven scroll. Ling Han gave an O. He hadn't entered the celestial realm yet, and didn't know how awesome the primal chaos origin beast and thousand transformations tortoise that Small Tower spoke of were. In any case, he only knew that the indestructible heaven scroll was very good and very powerful. Come. Ling Han nodded. He desired strength, whether it was to overthrow the 5 sects, or to meet that Qi Yanji and the 2-realm prodigy gathering 3 years later. You have to think clearly. If you don't endure it, then you will completely perish. Small Tower said solemnly. With your talent, it is not impossible to endure the divine fire in the Sun-Moon tier, but the danger is still extremely great. And if you do it again in the heavenly body tier, your chances will be much greater. Ling Han laughed and said, since you said that I can endure it, then I believe that I can definitely do it. Small Tower nodded and said, I'll give you 3 days' time to circulate the indestructible heaven scroll again. You have to thoroughly grasp every detail. This is the key for you to pass the tempering of the divine fire. Otherwise, only death awaits you. What comes next is your willpower. Without the resolve to overcome everything and walk to the end, you will only be burned to ashes by the divine fire. All right. Ling Han meditated under the reincarnation tree and completely circulated the indestructible heaven scroll once. He studied every detail, and after confirming that he had truly circulated it as he wished, he stood up. And 5 days had passed and not the 3 days that Small Tower had said. This was 5 years of Tao comprehension. Let's begin. Ling Han said solemnly. Small Tower sent Ling Han to a faraway place. There was actually a gigantic great furnace here, ancient in appearance. Ling Han had never seen it before. Why would a furnace suddenly appear? Ling Han was surprised. Small Tower, just how many things have you been hiding from me? Small Tower did not speak. Hey, I'm talking to you. Ling Han called out loudly. Oh, is that so? Only then did Small Tower speak up. I didn't hear you just now. What are you talking about? Ling Han repeated the question, but Small Tower was still stupefied. Fuck, so this Tsundra Tower did not want to answer him at all, and that was why it had pretended to be deaf and mute. He was really naive to actually believe that a tool spirit could have a time when its ears would fail to work. Go in. Small Tower shook lightly, and the great furnace opened. Hong immediately blazing flames soared into the skies. In comparison, Aoziyun's black flames were practically child's play. Ling Han couldn't help but grit his teeth. If he threw himself into such divine fire, he would definitely turn into ashes in an instant. Was this tempering, or was this sending him to his death? Remember, the only thing that can protect you is the indestructible heaven scroll. You only need to continuously circulate the heaven scroll, and forget everything else. Small Tower said solemnly. Whether or not you can seek life in death, and rise from the ashes, this is the key. Don't ever think of going against this kind of flames. This is something that is completely impossible. Because they are not divine flames but immortal flames. Fuck. Reading on a cell phone is more refreshing. Chapter 1258. With Ling Han's current physique, putting aside immortal flames, even level 6 divine flames would be able to melt him in half a year or a year as long as he had enough time. Level 7 divine flames would be easy, and he would only need 10 days to half a month. Then what about level 8, level 9 or level 10? They would probably be able to turn him into ashes in an instant. Immortal flames chuckled. He was really seeking his own death. To say nothing of the fact that he was only at the Sun-Moon tier now, so what if he advanced into the heavenly body tier? Could he resist immortal flames? What, are you afraid? Small Tower didn't rush him. Ling Han grimaced and said, Are you sure I can still rise from the ashes? Small Tower said calmly, In the outside world, to say nothing of being burned by immortal flames, even level 8 divine flames can instantly turn you into ashes. But here you can maintain a bit of your divine sense, and let you circulate the indestructible heaven scroll. When you comprehend the profound secrets of rising from the ashes, you will be able to reconstruct your body. It paused and then continued. Moreover, though you have fused your two souls, there will still be a bit of hidden danger. Only by rising from the ashes can you completely merge your two selves into one. Ling Han clenched his teeth, and with a sudden leap, jumped into the great furnace. He had really jumped into a pit of fire. Ling Han said self-mockingly as he circulated the indestructible heaven scroll. Boom! The terrifying flames swept over, and Ling Han was unable to put up even the slightest bit of resistance. His entire body was incinerated into nothingness. These were immortal flames and their level was far too high. Even if the notionless saint were here, even if he were at his peak, he would only be insta-killed if he charged into these immortal flames. Under normal circumstances he should have already died, but in the Black Tower, there was a power that protected a sliver of his divine sense. A sliver of his divine sense wasn't his whole divine sense, and the immortal flames could even temper his divine sense. Ling Han seemed to have returned to 10,000 years ago. At that time his body had been shattered by the Black Tower, and only a sliver of his divine sense remained. He comprehended the indestructible heaven scroll in a special state, and only reincarnated 10,000 years later. Right now it was a bit similar. He lost his physical body, completely unable to move, yet still had to have his soul burned by the immortal flame. This was just too painful. This was something that went straight into the soul, so it was impossible for him to faint. He was forced to experience that boundless pain, which made him want to shout and scream. But now that he didn't have a physical body, he couldn't make any sound even if he wanted to. A thought flashed through his mind. He might as well just die. This was too unbearable. As soon as this thought emerged, he was immediately overwhelmed with shock. It turned out that the hesitation and cowardice that he had yet to sever on the path of success had finally erupted when he was enduring unparalleled pain. He wanted to suppress this thought, but the immortal flame burned his soul, the pain like a tide, each wave more ferocious than the last, making his will also become blurry. Before this, he had indeed suffered a lot of pain, but that was only on the physical level. There had never been a time like this where he had lost his physical body, and the pain was directly affecting his spirit. Even with his great willpower, he still wanted to die. His will was getting weaker and weaker, and his soul fire was on the verge of collapse. If this thought fell into hell, he would never be able to get up again. No! A flash of indignation suddenly flashed through his mind. He had cultivated bitterly for so many years, but it wasn't for the sake of dying. He still had family, friends, and lovers. He still hadn't seen his son, and he still hadn't suppressed that fierce woman, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Moreover, he still hadn't overthrown the 5 sects, and he still hadn't found that mysterious assassin that he had traveled from the joint peace planet to the flying cloud planet. There were too many regrets and things that he couldn't let go of. How could he die? A wisp of flame ignited in his heart, and Ling Han was determined to live on. The indestructible heaven scroll circulated in his spirit. This was a dual refinement of the body and soul in the first place, and now that his physical body was gone, his spirit was still there. Over and over again, Ling Han circulated the indestructible heaven scroll, and his spirit was finally no longer dim. However, this only maintained the vitality of his spirit, and didn't mean that he was no longer suffering the pain of being burned by the fierce flames. In reality, the longer he resisted, the longer he would be burned, and the pain wouldn't lessen in the slightest. Rising from the ashes. Small Tower's words flashed through Ling Han's mind. Resisting the immortal flames wasn't the correct solution. With his current abilities, it was impossible for him to resist them. He was able to live because he was presently in the Black Tower, and what he needed to do was to search for the secrets of rising from the ashes from the immortal flames. And the reference was the indestructible heaven scroll. A portion of this scripture was obtained through the secret technique of the immortal phoenix. If he could truly master this scripture, then Ling Han would grasp the great mystical power of rising from the ashes of the immortal phoenix, and truly possess the ability of being indestructible. As he endured the burning of the fierce flames, He analyzed the portion of the scripture in the indestructible heavens scroll that was related to reconstructing one's body. Ordinarily, he wouldn't discover anything special about this. But under the burning of the immortal flames, Ling Han suddenly had another comprehension. So that's how it is, so that's how it is. Oh, it can be like this too. He sighed ruefully. Though the burning of the immortal flames was painful, it also allowed him to personally experience the feeling of being reborn after death. Of course, merely experiencing it was still not enough. He still had to comprehend it and truly grasp this secret technique. Multiple golden symbols circulated in his divine sense, continuously twisting and changing shape, and finally turned into multiple true phoenixes that soared into the skies with their necks raised, their bodies burning with endless fierce flames. These were not true phoenixes but immortal phoenixes. Ling Han suddenly had a kind of realization. If it was a celestial dragon, it should be of the water attribute, while immortal phoenixes were of the fire attribute, representing two extremes. For example, the black dragon tribe that Aoziun belonged to played with fire. They were completely mixed breeds, and could not possibly compare to immortal phoenixes at all. Could it be that these immortal flames were actually left behind by immortal phoenixes? Otherwise, why could he not die? That was because it was of the same origin as the indestructible heavens scroll. And why could he comprehend a secret technique that belongs solely to immortal phoenixes through the immortal flames, rising from the ashes? It was also because the indestructible heaven scroll had borrowed a portion of the technique of immortal phoenixes. As this kind of realization flashed through his mind, Ling Han's heart became more and more calm. He was confident in his comprehension ability, and furthermore this was inside the Black Tower, so he would definitely be able to comprehend this kind of technique. Time slowly passed. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Until 11 days later, a speck of light suddenly rose up from the great furnace. Small Tower was instantly excited, its body flickering uncertainly. It did not have a physical body in the first place, and had only transformed into the shape of a tower so that people could feel it. It immediately activated the Black Tower. Wang, the lid of the great furnace closed, and suddenly, the fierce flames that filled the skies disappeared. After that speck of light flew a few times, it suddenly fell to the ground. That was actually a fetus in the shape of light, and within the fetus was a small person. This was an infant. Ling Han. He had succeeded. Ling Han had finally comprehended the technique of rising from the ashes, but there seemed to be something wrong, because rising from the ashes would return to his original state, and not turn him into a small infant. Ha 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 ha. Even Small Tower could not help but laugh loudly. Oh. Chapter 1260. Ling Han had heard Rabbit describe realm spirit stones in detail before. Thus, he was able to tell with a single glance that this was a realm spirit stone. Moreover, it was palm-sized, which was astonishing. Normally, obtaining a realm spirit stone the size of a pinky was already very good. Obtaining a realm spirit stone the size of an egg would be extremely lucky. Moreover, this was palm-sized. Even heavenly body tier elites would be tempted by it. If I were you, I definitely wouldn't reach out to pick it up. I'd leave immediately. A voice suddenly traveled into Ling Han's ears. It was incredibly cold and carried with it a powerful killing intent. After exiting the Black Tower, Ling Han naturally transformed into his human form. He followed the voice and saw a young man standing nearby, staring at the realm spirit stone beneath his feet. This was definitely a being from the immortal realm. He didn't feel out of place. Ling Han couldn't help but smile and ask why. Because it's in my hands. If you fight with me, you'll only be killed by me, the young man said coldly. Oh, are you trying to snatch it from me? Ling Han asked. The young man snorted in disdain and said, right now, this realm spirit stone is ownerless. It hasn't fallen into your hands, so how can I snatch it from you? Natural treasures should belong to the strong. Ling Han bent down and picked up the realm spirit stone. He smiled and said, now that it's in my hands, what do I do? The young man's lips twitched in anger. Are you fucking trying to humiliate me? He said darkly, state your name. I don't kill nameless people with my 1,000 illusion saber. This person is interesting. Ling Han smiled and said, My surname is Enai, and my name is Ba. Enai Ba, the young man murmured. He didn't seem to have heard of such a powerful young man. However, after repeating the name a few times, he came to a realization. Isn't Enai Ba your father? This bastard actually dares to take advantage of me. Very well, you dare to play with me, Yanjun. The young man's killing intent surged. He couldn't help but want to kill someone. Ling Han put away the realm spirit stone and said, I was just joking. Young people should be magnanimous. Why so serious? Whoosh! There was a flash of saber light as Yanjun unsheathed his saber and slashed at Ling Han. His attainments in the saber Dao were extraordinary. With a slash of his saber, even the air was torn apart, revealing a vacuum crack. Ling Han used the star-plucking step, and as his figure flashed, he dodged this attack with incredible speed. He could not help but sigh. The immortal phoenix's secret technique was not only about rebirth from the ashes, but also speed. With a flap of the phoenix's wings, it was known as the world's fastest, and if he could comprehend such a wonderful technique, it would be great. Unfortunately, the focus of the indestructible heaven scroll was on indestructibility. It mainly focused on tempering the physique and spirit, and did not have any outstanding areas in terms of movement techniques and power. However, Yin Jun was taken aback. The other party's speed was a little too fast. He snorted and said, No wonder you dare to compete with me. Turns out you have some skills. Ling Han said indifferently, For the sake that this is the two-realm battlefield, I don't want to kill you. I want to leave you with a useful body to fight against the living beings of the netherworld. But if you don't know what's good for you, then I can only send you on your way. Yen Jun was so angry that he laughed and said, You only dodged a saber strike from me, yet you actually dare to boast so shamelessly? Heh, what a joke. Ling Han also laughed and said, If a tiger doesn't show its might, do you think I'm a sick cat? Yen Jun condensed his saber, and bursts of divine light surged from his body before entering the saber in his hand. Pung pung pung. The saber actually started to pulse as if it had a life of its own. Ling Han knew that his opponent was preparing a powerful technique, yet he did not attack. Instead, he allowed his opponent to prepare. Yen Jun was only at the peak stage of the low extreme, which was a sub-minor level higher than Ling Han. If Ling Han did not even have the confidence to win against him, then he would be far too much of a failure. Arrogant, you're truly arrogant, Yen Jun said. After absorbing the boundless divine light, the saber in his hand was actually surging with a black aura. It appeared extremely strange. Ling Han clearly knew that he was preparing a powerful technique, yet he did not attack to interrupt him. He was far too arrogant. Junior, you're going to pay the price in blood. He roared as he pounced toward Ling Han. Wang! His saber slashed out, and a ferocious black beast materialized. It was hard to tell what it was, but it looked a bit like a tiger with the tail of a fish. The ferocious beast opened its massive mouth and bit at Ling Han. Its massive mouth was pitch black, and it looked as if it could swallow the entire world. Ling Han did not retreat. Instead, he condensed a fist and punched it at the ferocious beast. Countless divine patterns intertwined and transformed into a boundless streak of light. Pung! The ferocious beast was instantly sent flying, and it transformed back into a streak of saber light that shattered in the sky. Yen Jun was astonished. He had already unleashed his full power with this saber strike. Moreover, the 1,000 illusionary saber in his hand had increased the might of his attack by several fold. However, Ling Han had only used an ordinary punch to shatter his attack. This was far too powerful, wasn't it? Yen Jun hurriedly puckered his lips and roared. The sound waves surged forth, and under the influence of his origin power, they spread in all directions at a speed far faster than normal. It wasn't long before a long roar traveled over from the distance. Moreover, there was more than one roar. Ling Han couldn't help but chuckle and say, What? You can't defeat me, so you're looking for help? Yen Jun's face involuntarily flushed red. He had always been conceited, and had thought that he was at least the second strongest among those his age. However, he had encountered a powerful opponent that he could not defeat right after coming to the two-realm battlefield to train. His opponent was even weaker than him by a sub-minor level. If it was just a battle of wills, he would definitely turn around and leave with his pride. However, this also involved a realm spirit stone. That was a palm-sized realm spirit stone. How precious was that? Thus, he shamelessly called for help from his companions. After a short while, 5 people rushed over from all directions at almost the same time. Their cultivation levels ranged from the low extreme to the high extreme, and there were 4 men and 1 woman. Junior brother Yen, what happened? The 5 people asked in unison. This was because Yen Jun had just released an emergency signal from the Blazing Inferno sect. Yen Jun pointed at Ling Han and said, "He has a realm spirit stone on him. It's the size of a palm." When the 5 people heard this, they all revealed looks of surprise and joy. An older man clasped his hands in greeting toward Ling Han, and said, "Brother, would you be willing to part with that realm spirit stone? Our Blazing Inferno sect will definitely repay you." Ling Han smiled and said, "I'll definitely repay you, and you want me to give you my realm spirit stones?" The 6 people looked at each other, and a hint of joy appeared on their faces. It seemed like Ling Han's attitude was negotiable. "Brother, state your conditions," the older man said. Ling Han pondered for a moment and then said, "Simple. Use true origin stones or godly metal to exchange for it." In any case, realm spirit stones were wealth to him, so he naturally didn't mind selling them to anyone. Sure, the older man hurriedly said. He hesitated for a moment, and then said, "Brother, can you let me see the size of this realm spirit stone with my own eyes?" Chapter 1261. Ling Han wasn't afraid of their schemes. He took out the realm spirit stone, flashed it and said, "Satisfied?" Satisfied. The older man hurriedly nodded and asked, "Brother, how many true origin stones are you planning to sell it for? How much are you willing to pay?" Ling Han asked with a smile. Yen Jun and the others whispered to each other. After a while they finally said, "We have a limited number of true origin stones. Brother, would you like to come with us to the Blazing Inferno sect? Our elders will naturally give you a sufficient reward." Ling Han shook his head with a smile and said, "That won't do. How do I know if you're trying to lure me into a trap and kill me there?" It was important to be wary of others. Even if he had an accomplice, he couldn't act recklessly. "How about this? I'll give you 3 months. After 3 months, I'll wait for you at Old Jiangxin in Wolfang City. If you bring me enough true origin stones or godly metal above level 4, I'll sell this realm spirit stone to you. Otherwise, I'll auction it." A young man's expression instantly turned ferocious, and he said, "Seventh senior brother, let's capture this guy and take the realm spirit stone." 2 people immediately agreed. The older man pondered for a moment, then shook his head and said, "How could the Blazing Inferno sect do such a thing? Don't mention it again." He nodded at Ling Han and said, "Brother, it's a deal. We'll meet again at Old Jiangxin in 3 months. He led the 5 of them away. After walking for some distance, someone couldn't help but ask, "Seventh senior brother, why didn't you use force? Ancestor Mao is only a tiny bit away from advancing to the heavenly body tier. If we return that realm spirit stone, he'll definitely succeed, and we'll all become heroes." "Humph." The older man shook his head and said, "That brat isn't easy to deal with. Otherwise, why would junior brother Yen call us over?" Yen Jun immediately looked embarrassed and said, "I'm far from being a match for him." The others all exclaimed in shock. Although Yen Jun's cultivation level wasn't high, his battle prowess was extraordinary among them. He was a 4-star genius, and only those at the high extreme could suppress him. Since he said that he was far from being a match for Ling Han, that meant that Ling Han's battle prowess was at least at the early stage of the high extreme, or even the middle stage or late stage. The older man continued, "If we attack him together, it'll be fine if we succeed. However, if we fail, we'll have no fate with that realm spirit stone. We won't even have the chance to purchase it. Junior brother Lu, junior brother Ma, go and find Uncle Qian immediately. He's at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier, so he'll definitely be able to suppress that brat. We'll follow him in secret, and when Uncle Qian arrives, We'll force that brat to hand over his realm spirit stones. If he's willing to cooperate, I'll spare his life. Otherwise, I'll send him on his way. The other 5 felt apprehensive in their hearts. This 7th senior brother looked warm and amiable, but his mind was cautious and gloomy like a venomous snake. Those who offended him really didn't even know how they died. They hurriedly acted according to the plan. 2 of them left to bring over stronger elites, while the other 4 followed Ling Han in secret. They left behind special marks of the blazing inferno sect along the way to guide him. Ling Han's divine sense was extremely sharp, so he sensed it not long after he was targeted. Sure enough, you can't judge a person's heart from his appearance, Ling Han thought ruefully. In the beginning, he had still had a favorable impression of the older man, which was why he had agreed to sell the realm spirit stone to them first. But now, there were only 4 of them left. It was clear that 2 of them had gone to bring over reinforcements, while the remaining 4 were following him in secret, planning to deal him a fatal blow. However, Ling Han was unafraid. Putting aside the fact that this was the 2-realm battlefield, the regulations here were strange, preventing elites from unleashing their full power. Even if his power wasn't damaged, he could still hide in the Black Tower. And if the reinforcements that the other side brought weren't at the heavenly body tier, Ling Han didn't want to hide. Instead, he wanted to fight. In this special place, he could even put up a fight against elites at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier. He continued to search for realm spirit stones. In any case, he had to wait for 3 months for the Black Tower to regather the power of the immortal flame. Thus, he didn't have a specific target. He looked for realm spirit stones, and he would sometimes enter the Black Tower to concoct pills. This caused trouble for Yen Jun and the others. They suddenly lost track of Ling Han's whereabouts, and they thought that he had discovered their scheme and secretly fled. However, a few days later, Ling Han mysteriously reappeared, which made them even more confused. What is the meaning of this? Did he discover our plan or not? Fortunately, Ling Han didn't disappear for a long time. Most of the time he was walking on the ground. Occasionally he would encounter netherworld beings, and they would either fight or flee, depending on how strong they were. Ling Han deliberately went easy on them, and he didn't use his full power when he encountered netherworld elites at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier. Instead, he directly fled. Otherwise, if the other side's reinforcements were only at the Sun Moon tier, they definitely wouldn't dare to attack. He gave them a chance. If they retreated at the brink of a precipice, he wouldn't pursue the matter. However, if they attacked, he wouldn't show any mercy either. 11 days later, Ling Han's luck was on a completely different level, and he found another realm spirit stone. However, this realm spirit stone was far smaller than the one he had found last time. It was only the size of his little finger. No matter how small a mosquito's leg is, it's still meat. He chuckled as he put the realm spirit stone away. He tilted his head and said, "They're finally here?" The 4 divine sense that had been following him this whole time had now become 7. He sighed. He wasn't a bloodthirsty person, yet there were always people who would force him to kill. Xiao 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 xiao. 7 figures flew out and surrounded him. They were Yen Jun and the others. A mocking smile appeared on Ling Han's face, and he said, "What's the meaning of this? Didn't we agree to meet again in Wolffang City?" Yen Jun and the others all blushed. They hadn't kept their word, and they had been exposed right in front of their faces. This was really not a good feeling. However, the only elder among them wore a cold expression, and he said, "Young man, don't play around. Immediately hand over the realm spirit stones. Don't seek your own death." A thoughtful expression appeared on Ling Han's face. He took out the 2 realm spirit stones and said, "Are you talking about this one or this one?" He raised his left and right hands slightly higher. A greedy expression instantly appeared on the elder's face, and he said, "Hand them both over." "Fine, 300 million true origin stones," Ling Han said with a nod. The elder immediately became angry, and he said, "Brat, do you think I'm joking with you? If you dare to refuse again, I'll kill you." "I'm so scared." Ling Han intentionally made a fearful gesture, and then laughed. "All right, who's going to take it?" He glanced at the others, and then pushed his hands forward. Come and take it. Don't be polite. Chapter 1262. Yin Jun and the other 5 looked hesitant. This guy's behavior is too strange. Even if he's really scared, shouldn't he just throw the realm spirit stone on the ground and run away? Are you kidding me now? However, an elite at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier was right in front of him, and he still dared to make trouble? A youth took a step forward and said, "All right, leave it to me." His eyes were filled with ambition. If he could personally bring back these 2 realm spirit stones, then his status within the sect would definitely rise greatly. Most importantly, Ancestor Mao was only 1 step away from advancing into the heavenly body tier. If he had contributed to this breakthrough, he would definitely be looked upon differently by Ancestor Mao. How could he receive the attention of a heavenly body tier elite? After he took a step, he immediately took a second step and a third step. He arrived in front of Ling Han, and reached out to grab the 2 realm spirit stones. Ling Han let out a sigh. He curled his fingers slightly and Xiao, a ray of sword chi immediately swept out. "How dare you?" the young man roared. He knew that Ling Han was very powerful, and could even suppress Yin Jun. However, his cultivation level had already reached the peak stage of the medium extreme, and he was also a 1-star genius. Thus he was slightly more powerful than Yin Jun. Thus, even if Yin Jun couldn't defeat Ling Han, that didn't mean he couldn't. Taking a step back, even if he couldn't defeat them, he had the ability to protect himself. It was precisely because of this that he dared to step forward. Otherwise, what if Ling Han was a hothead and wanted to drag him into the water? He did not expect that Ling Han would really dare to attack him. Even though he was mentally prepared for this, he still couldn't help but feel furious when this wisp of sword light swept towards him. He raised his hand to block the sword light. He thought to himself, "There's a consummate stage powerhouse behind me now. If you attack on impulse, you'll be courting death. You'll be suppressed very soon." The old man was horrified and hurriedly stretched out his hand to grab it. Stop. It was too late. The sword light streaked past. Blood splattered. 4 of the young man's fingers had been chopped off like flowers scattered by a celestial maiden. Ah! He immediately let out a blood-curdling scream. Ling Han used the star-plucking step and quickly retreated, dodging the elder's attack. He laughed and said, My fingers are all broken. How can I hold it?" "Brat, you really don't know what's good for you," the old man said with a gloomy expression. "This kid is trapped in a tight encirclement, yet he still dares to put up a stubborn resistance. He's really courting death." Ling Han laughed and said, "It's too early to say who will live and who will die. Young man, you're far too ignorant," the elder said with a humph. He then stretched out his hand and grabbed at Ling Han. Multiple divine patterns appeared, and his hand transformed into a 5-fingered mountain that descended from the sky. His name was Qian Sen, and he was one of the higher-ups of the Blazing Inferno sect. Because an elder of the sect had truly touched the boundary of the heavenly body tier, this became the most important matter of the Blazing Inferno sect. Everyone was mobilized to search for realm spirit stones for this ancestor Mao. After all, touching the boundary and truly crossing over were 2 different things. Moreover, the Blazing Inferno sect was only a small force at the Sun Moon tier. If they could produce an elite at the heavenly body tier, the power of their sect would definitely rise to a whole new level. Under such circumstances, it could be said that the Blazing Inferno sect had truly gone mad for realm spirit stones. Ling Han's eyes widened, and heaven's might instantly burst forth. Wang! Heaven's might surged in all directions. What's going on? Why has my power suddenly dropped so much? Heavens! Yin Jun and the others all exclaimed in shock. Even Qian Sen's descending hand was slightly off course, and it had struck in the wrong direction. However, because this hand was far too large, it didn't matter even if it had been slightly off course. It still continued to descend toward Ling Han's head. Ling Han clenched his fist and punched toward the 5-fingered mountain in the sky. The power of his fist condensed into a single point. The 5-fingered mountain pressed down, Yet a streak of divine light soared into the sky. This was a hole that had been blasted into the hand, and the light from the fist was dazzling. Qian's son couldn't help but groan in pain. Although the five-fingered mountain had been formed from his origin power, his hand had still received a slight impact when a hole had been blasted into it. He felt a sharp pain in his palm, and a red mark had been left behind. He was slightly astonished. This young man was so powerful. He was actually able to pierce through his defenses and wound his body. Of course, this was because he was far too small. The area that his attack covered was far too wide, and his power was scattered like this. Even if his power was tens of thousands of times greater than Ling Han's, his attack would still be much, much weaker. On the other hand, if he had restricted his power and attacked in a point-to-point manner, his attack would have most likely missed due to the sudden impact of heaven's might. "Young man, you're very impressive," he said in a sinister voice. Although he was praising Ling Han, he didn't conceal his surging killing intent at all. Ling Han smiled modestly and said, "It's just so. There's no need to praise me like this, elder. This will make me proud. We young people should be careful not to be arrogant." Qian Sin's expression finally changed. Ling Han's calm expression caused him to be unable to control his fury. "Do you really want to seek death?" He opened his left eye, and it actually transformed into a hole of flames. He reached in and grabbed a divine sword that was burning with flames. Using one's own body to nurture a god tool could push the might of the god tool to the pinnacle. However, there was also an obvious flaw, and that was that the god tool's growth would be at the cost of absorbing the user's blood essence, which would affect the user's cultivation. However, for someone like Qian's son, he was already standing at the peak stage of the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier, and it was impossible for him to advance any further. Thus, he didn't mind expending some blood essence. In any case, he could replenish it with some cultivation. This divine sword was something that he had accumulated over 100 years ago. He had bought a piece of level 8 godly metal, and ordered someone to forge it into a sword. Then, he had kept it in his body to nurture the god tool. Although it had only been over 100 years, it had already reached great accomplishment. With this sword in hand, he was confident that he could defeat most opponents at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier. A suitable divine weapon would be a great boost to a martial artist. Blazing heart burns. Qian's son moved, and with a slash, the flames turned into a beam of light that pierced toward Ling Han's chest. Because of the terrifying heat, ripples appeared in the air as the beam of light swept past. Then they all started to burn. This was extremely terrifying. To say nothing of coming into contact with the terrifying flames, just the high temperature alone could cause a cultivator at the early stage of the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier to lose a layer of skin. The others all retreated, afraid to come into contact with these flames. If that happened, they wouldn't even know how they died. However, Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. If you used poisonous water and sharp metal to attack him, then he would really be a bit wary. After all, Qian Sin was at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier. However, it just had to be flames. One had to realize that he had been burned by immortal flames, and from them, he had deduced the secret technique of the immortal phoenix tribe that allowed them to rise from the ashes. If one wanted to use fire to subdue him, they would have to at least crush him in terms of cultivation level. Chapter 1264. Brat, just you wait. Qian Sun shouted before turning to run. His battle prowess was indeed enough to suppress Ling Han, but his physique was too terrifying, and he couldn't kill him with a single strike. Moreover, Ling Han had a strange flower that could affect his divine sense. Thus, if he couldn't kill Ling Han with a single strike, he would be at a disadvantage. He had lived for more than 3 million years, and had experienced many life and death situations. Because of this, he treasured his life even more. He couldn't take revenge even if he stayed and fought to the death, so why take the risk? Return to the Blazing Inferno sect. Ancestor Mao was about to break through. The realm spirit stones could only speed up the process, but not necessarily. Moreover, even if he failed, there were still many people in the Blazing Inferno sect. How could they not gain anything? He sprinted all the way, and whenever Ling Han caught up to him, He would strike out with his sword. Under the bombardment of power at the consummate level, even Ling Han could not possibly ignore it. Every strike would leave behind a wound, though it would not be able to wound his foundation. In fact, in a head-on battle, Qian Sun could severely wound Ling Han. After all, he was too powerful. However, because he hadn't been able to wound Ling Han even after using the divine flames, this had left a strong psychological scar in his heart. He thought that Ling Han's defense was indestructible, yet he completely didn't realize that if he gave up on the divine flames and attacked with pure power, the might of his attacks would instead be even greater. Because of this misconception, he ran madly and didn't want to continue fighting. One had to know that Ling Han was only a 6-star genius, and his battle prowess was at the early stage of the high extreme at most. How could he compare to consummate level? Of course, Qian Sun was still wary of the misty soul-capturing flower. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in such a sorry state. After chasing Qian Sun for a while, Ling Han finally stopped. There was no point in continuing the chase. He couldn't kill Qian Senator. Moreover, Wulfang City wasn't far away. Once he entered the city, it was strictly forbidden to engage in private fights. He thought for a moment, and decided to return to Wulfang City to sell the realm spirit stones he had. In addition, he also had some pills that he had refined in his spare time. He couldn't keep them in his hands. He had to exchange them for true origin stones and godly metal to improve the divine demon sword. In terms of merit, he had killed many beings of the netherworld. There were also quite a few at the low extreme of the sun-moon tier, which was enough for him to retire. Of course, once they retired, they could still return to the two-realm battlefield. Moreover, they could come and go with even more freedom. They would not have to worry about not being able to leave without enough contribution points, as they would be treated as deserters and executed in public. Half a day later, Ling Han returned to Wulfang City. The first thing he did was to head to the main hall of the military headquarters to exchange his contribution points. He tossed out the corpses of the netherworld beings one by one and quickly calculated the total value of the contribution points. There were other uses for these corpses. Some almighty beings wanted to use these corpses to figure out the difference between the cultivation techniques of the netherworld and the immortal realm. This was not a futile effort. Rather, it was very meaningful. Once the netherworld's cultivation technique was deciphered, one would be able to counter it. Even if the two of them were of equal strength, the situation would become one-sided. More importantly, the powerhouses were still researching how to free the martial practitioners of the God realm from being suppressed by the laws of heaven and earth of the netherworld in preparation for a full-scale invasion in the future. If the God realm was like that, then the netherworld would probably be like that as well. Ling Han felt very confused. Just who was invading whom in the two realms? From the information he had, neither side seemed to be good people. No one wanted to play the role of the victim. He shook his head. The present him was still too weak, and was completely unable to interfere in such a huge matter. He would first raise his cultivation level. After calculating his contribution points, aside from being able to retire, he had gained over 4,000 points. However, 4,000 points was really not enough for him to exchange for the things he needed at this stage. He could exchange for a large number of mountain river tier resources, but they were completely useless to him. Moreover, it was strictly forbidden to sell the things that could be exchanged for using contribution points in Wulfang City. Those who were caught would be sentenced to death. Ling Han decided not to exchange for now. In any case, he was a free man now. He would kill a few more netherworld beings and accumulate more contribution points in the future. He went to the auction house in the city. Being able to open an auction house in the two-realm battlefield not only required courage, but also powerful connections and strength. The Gold Origin auction house clearly possessed these characteristics. It was said that it belonged to the Jin clan, and the Jin clan was a superforce that had been doing business for generations. They controlled an astonishing amount of resources, and together with the Treasure Forest Pavilion, they were known as the Twin Prodigies. Ling Han entered the auction house, and after taking out the Realm Spirit Stone, he immediately attracted the auctioneer, who directly discussed the details of the auction with him. Such a large Realm Spirit Stone could be auctioned for a good price. Thus, the auction house decided not to rush to auction it. Instead, they wanted to spread the news as much as possible, so that more elites could participate in the auction. Of course, the higher the cultivation level, the more astonishing the wealth. Ling Han did not mind waiting for a few more days. He took out another alchemical pill and asked the auctioneer to auction it while he was at it. The auction house charged a 15% processing fee for the auction of the realm spirit stone. One could imagine how astronomical this would be. Thus, the auction house decided to be generous and auction off these scattered alchemical pills for Ling Han for free. This would take about a month to prepare. Ling Han thought for a moment, and then accepted the auction house's invitation. He stayed in the auction house for the next few days. He continued to concoct alchemical pills and cultivate. In another 20 or so days, the Black Tower would allow him to temper his body with the immortal flames for the second time. How pitiful! When there was no one around, Ling Han had reverted to his infant form. This was really too displeasing. He simply spent all his energy on alchemical pills. Even if he had endless cultivation resources, it would take him at least 10,000 years to accumulate origin power for one minor level if he cultivated bitterly. Thus, there was not much meaning in him cultivating bitterly. In any case, he had the Berserk Blood Spirit pill, so consuming pills was the way to go. For example, some prodigies could reach the peak stage of the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier in a few hundred or a few thousand years. Obviously, they had obtained night grass. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to advance so quickly if they simply relied on holding true origin stones and cultivating bitterly. Prodigies were mainly reflected in their comprehension of cultivation level. If a mediocre person was given Berserk Blood Spirit pill, so what if he reached the peak stage of the low extreme after consuming 4 pills? He would not be able to comprehend the regulations of heaven and earth in the next 1 million years. He would only die of old age. Over 20 days later, Small Tower informed Ling Han that he could undergo the second tempering of his body with the immortal flames. Previously, he had always been looking forward to this, but when this day really arrived, Ling Han was a little afraid. Thinking about that experience, it was really terrifying. His body had been burned to ashes, and only a wisp of his divine sense remained. But for the sake of becoming stronger, Ling Han still gritted his teeth and resolutely threw himself into the furnace. This tempering process took another 3 days and 3 nights. Ling Han was fresh out of the furnace, so he naturally became a small infant again. However, he had not grown much in these 3 months, so returning to his original form was naturally not a big loss. Not bad. The toughness of my skin, flesh, and godly bones have improved slightly. Ling Han nodded. The key is still rising from the ashes. Now that I have really suffered fatal injuries, there is a 1% chance that I can rising from the ashes. Not only will my injuries be healed, but I will also be able to return to my peak condition. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.